What if Bella joined Hogwarts and became Harry's girlfriend? So let's get started. 16 years ago, half-giant Rubius Hagrid looked up at the sky when a piercing whine split the air. A few seconds later, a flying motorcycle landed in the yard, next to the house with a gaping hole at the roof. Sirius Black stumbled over to Hagrid, shocked. The blood had drained from his handsome face as his eyes took in the debris around him. "James, Lily," he croaked. Hagrid shook his head, crying silently. "Bella and Harry?" Sirius asked urgently. Hagrid picked up the two toddlers clutching to his leg. Sirius held his hands out for them. Hagrid passed the girl over to him. Bella, too young to understand the severity of the situation, laid her head on her uncle's shoulder. "Give Harry to me, Hagrid. James made me his godfather," Sirius said softly. Hagrid shook his head. "Dumbledore told me to get him tear his aunt and uncle's house." "Why, understand, right Sirius?" Sirius nodded. He should have known. "Take the bike. I'll drop Bella off at Renee's and they'll get out of the country." "Bella can still go to Hogwarts, right?" he added as a thought occurred to him. Hagrid nodded. "Oh, course she can. Dumbledore'll figure something out." He looked at Harry closely for the first time. "Good lord, what?" Sirius asked. Hagrid turned Harry around. On his forehead was a scar in the shape of a lightning bolt. Sirius checked Bella over for a scar and found one in the shape of a heart on her right hip. He tried to kill both of them. Sirius was appalled and amazed. Nobody had ever survived the killing curse before, and here two toddlers sat, unharmed by the curse's power. But why would Voldemort, the most powerful dark wizard of all time, try to kill two innocent children? "I'll ask Professor Dumbledore about this," Hagrid mumbled. He laid Harry in the crook of his arm and started the enchanted bike. He swung his legs over the sides and took off into the night sky. Sirius took one last look at the rubble on one of his best friend's house as he heard the sirens. Took him long enough, he thought as he disparated, his niece asleep on his shoulder. He wouldn't see her again for 12 years. "Bella, do you remember what today is?" Alice chirped, excited. "Well, it's not Christmas." I smirked, just to annoy her. I succeeded and earned a glare. "No, stupid, it's your 17th birthday." I sighed. Normally, I would have been excited. This would have been a momentous occasion for me, becoming of age in my world, but with Sirius in hiding in London and Remus doing work for the Order. Nobody with magical blood was here to celebrate with me. The Cullens don't know I'm a witch. I'd never used magic around them and I didn't plan on telling them anytime soon. But you know what they say about the best laid plans. They fall apart. So now I'm sitting in the Cullens' living room on the 15th of August, gloomy for the first time in a little over a decade and a half. About the fact that it was my birthday. "Alice, I told you I didn't want a party." I groaned. "Too bad, you're getting one. Go home, hang out with Charlie, and come back around 5-ish. That'll give me 2 hours to set things up." Edward sighed. "Let's go, love, bye," everybody but Rosalie called. As soon as Edward left, I unlocked the door and went to my room. I wanted to check to see if Harry, Hermione, Ron, Hagrid, Sirius, and/or Remus sent me my annual birthday goodies. If Hedwig was nearby, Edward's leaving would be worth it. If not, I would kill Alice. The first thing I did when I reached my room was pull my wand out of the sheath on my leg. It was similar to what Muggles used to carry hunting knives. Sirius got it for me last Christmas before I left. Then I opened my window. Immediately, a snow owl swooped in and landed on my bed. Following her was a small fluff ball of an owl, a barn owl, and a hoot owl. I knew who sent me the first two, but the other two looked like regular owls. I relieved those two of their burdens first, and they flew off. In one hand I held a note and in the other one was 2 letters. Then I turned to Hedwig and Pigwidgeon, or Pig, as Ron called him, Harry and Ron's owls. Hedwig had a small drawstring pouch and a letter, and Pig had a letter and a cake keeping him on the bed. I untied the cake and he went zooming around the room as usual. Hedwig looking at him with disdain. "You know, Rosalie looks at me the same way," I told her. She turned to me and tilted her head. I shrugged and opened one of the letters. "Hey Bella, Hap, why birthday and I hope you like your surprise. Hagrid." I curiously opened the second letter that came with his and saw that it was addresses in green ink with the Hogwarts crest sealing it. I broke open the letter eagerly. "Dear Miss Swan, below is a list of supplies you will need for your 7th year at Hogwarts. The train will leave from King's Cross on September 1st, and someone will be sent to your house to bring you to London on the 20th of August. Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Below that was a list of books and I saw that I would need dress robes again this year. Great, now I'll have to go shopping with Alice before the 20th, or have Hermione come with me in London. I put the letter next to Hagrid's and opened Ron's. Something fell out of it. Bella, hope everything's going well. Harry and Hermione are with me at the Burrow. We've got some good news, but we have been sworn to secrecy. I'm sure you'll find out soon. Happy birthday, Ron. What can't they tell me? I asked Hedwig. She just ruffled her feathers. I picked up whatever fell out of the letter pictures. A picture of Harry, Hermione, Ginny, Ron, Fred, George, and I in front of Hogwarts. Hagrid took this at the end of 5th year. A second picture with us, Sirius and Remus at Grimmauld Place. I had just opened my present from Sirius, and I was hugging him. Everyone else was laughing. In the wizarding world, if you develop the pictures in the right potion, they actually move. I was so excited when I found that out in 1st year. I smiled and put the picture next to the unwrapped cake before getting a quill, ink, and parchment from the floorboard beside my bed. Ron, thanks for the cake and pictures. Tell your mom thanks, too. You have no idea how happy you made me. I haven't talked to another wizard or witch for 7 months. Do you know how cut off I feel? Now I know how Harry felt the summer before 5th year. Charlie got me a Muggle camera, and Renee got me a scrapbook. I'll put the pictures in it right away. Tell everyone I said hi. Bella. I tied the note to Pig's leg and he flew out the window again. Hedwig nipped my hand lightly, drawing my attention back to Harry's letter and the pouch. I untied them both from her leg. Untying the bag, I turned it upside down. 4 necklaces fell into my hand, each with a different charm. There was a scarlet and gold miniature lion, a blue and bronze eagle, a yellow and black badger, and a green and silver serpent. Each chain was a mixture of the charms, colors. They were beautiful, and I knew who made them. Happy birthday, hope you like the necklaces. If not, blame Hermione. She made them. As you might have figured out, something big happened, but we can't tell you. Just be on the lookout, and if you see a big black dog, don't scream. Hope we get to see you soon. Hermione's driving is crazy. NEWT year is going to be torture, worse than OWLS. Harry and Hermione. I laughed. My assumption was correct. Harry would never make me something this beautiful on his own. Hedwig, do you want something to drink? I asked her. She hooted. So after she flew to my shoulder, I went to the bathroom, filled my hands with water, and held it up to her. She drank deeply before ruffling her feathers in thanks and taking off, leaving me to stand in the bathroom. I went back to my room and picked up the last letter. It was tiny. I opened it and read 3 words. Bella, look behind you. It was even shorter than the note Harry got from Sirius 5th year. Or was it 4th year? Ah, well, trivial matters were unimportant. Great, now I'm sounding like Dumbledore. How old is that man? 300. I wonder if Carlisle ever met him. Anyways, I looked at the letter, absorbing their meaning, when I heard a faint pop from behind me. I turned around and saw one of my favorite wizards. Remus, I cried, flinging myself into his arms. I slipped right in front of him, and he caught me. Easy, Bella, he chuckled. Don't you want me to take the curse off first? I gasped. What curse? The clumsy curse. Ever since you were a year old, you were always tripping, and Professor McGonagall in PR. Professor Flitwick finally found the counter curse. My mouth dropped open. For real? Remus Lupin chuckled. Yes, Bella, for real. He stepped back, pulled out his wand, and did some complicated figure eights. A golden light enveloped me. But nothing else happened. Remus, did it work? I asked dubiously. Well, skip around and find out. Are you crazy? Me, skip, it's official. Lupin has finally lost it. Being a werewolf for too long must have more side effects than I thought. Remus shrugged. I sighed and skipped around the room, not tripping once. It worked. I cried joyfully. Remus chuckled. Yes, it did. Happy birthday, Bella. Quote. I hugged him again. If you don't mind me asking, why are you here? Oh, I just thought I'd bring you the best birthday present ever. What is that? You're here. I'm going back to Hogwarts. I slapped my hands over my mouth. I almost told him about the Cullens. Almost. He raised an eyebrow, but let it drop. Well, a dog barked downstairs. My eyes widened. Sirius, I breathed. But how? Isn't he supposed to be in hiding? Well, Bella, that's the best news of all, Sirius Black, my uncle, said from the hallway. I slipped out of the doorway, which Remus still stood in. and nearly tackled Sirius in a giant bear hug. Sirius laughed. "Good afternoon, Bella. It's nice to see you again. But I thought, I'm free. They made it official a week ago. I am now a free man. No longer a fugitive, no longer hunted by the ministry, no longer stuck in that hellhole." "We get it, Padfoot," Remus chuckled. I squealed and bounced up and down in a perfect imitation of Alice. "This is great. Now, all I need to do is tell the Cullens," I whispered to myself, just a little too loudly. "Who?" Sirius asked. I blushed. The Cullens. They're animal-drinking vampires." "What? Vampires? Seriously, Bella, they're dangerous." I smirked. "Actually, Remus, they are my friends, and one of them is my boyfriend." "Will I like him?" Sirius asked. "I hope so. He was born in 1901, changed in 1918. And he is a true gentleman. He's also very handsome, but I wasn't going to say that in front of them." "Hey, Mooney, did you bring your potion?" Sirius asked, not so discreetly changing the subject. I shot him a grateful smile anyway. "I took it before we left," Remus sighed. "Being a werewolf can be a real pain." I smiled sympathetically. "It's almost as bad as being a vampire, if I'm not mistaken. At least you only got bit and didn't feel any more pain until you changed." "What do you mean?" Sirius asked. "Vampires, when they bite their victim, inject venom into their system. If they leave the victim, the venom spreads. After 3 days, the victim becomes a vampire," Remus informed him. "Yeah, it hurts like hell, too." I showed them my scar from where James bit me before they could ask. "Bella, what happened?" they gasped. I was watching the Cullens play baseball, when 3 nomadic vampires came. One of them was a tracker, and he decided that, since my blood smelled so good, he'd hunt me. I came home and told Charlie I was leaving. The Cullens got me out of there. Alice, Jasper and I went to Phoenix. The tracker evaded the others, and he tricked me into believing he had Renee. I met him at the ballet studio where I took lessons that one summer, and he bit me. The Cullens got there in time, and Edward sucked the venom back out. Which is quite an accomplishment, since my blood sings to him. And I wound up in the hospital for 3 days with a broken leg. That is the short, abbreviated version. I said this all in a huff, watching their faces carefully. They were speechless, worried. "Where was your wand?" Sirius finally asked. I blushed a deep red. "I kinda left it under my bed when I came back to pack and tell Charlie I was leaving." "Bella," they cried. "I'm still alive," I replied. Still, Remus was appalled. "Leave it to Bella to attract one of the most dangerous creatures known to wizard kind," Sirius muttered. "Hey," I objected. Suddenly, someone knocked downstairs on the door rapidly. I rushed into my room and looked out the window. Sure enough, sitting in the drive, was a silver Volvo. I ran downstairs and threw the door open. Remus and Sirius were 3 feet behind me. Edward hugged me tightly when he saw me. "Edward, it's good to see you too, but what are you doing here?" I asked, but I already knew. "This your boyfriend, Bella?" Sirius asked before Edward could reply. "Yep, this is Edward Cullen." "Edward, these are Sirius Black and Remus Lupin." Edward still hadn't let me go. "Alice saw you here with a giant black dog, and she panicked." "You mean you panicked, don't you?" I teased. He looked down at me seriously. Everyone was worried, once Alice told them. "Wait, you never mentioned." "Shut up, Remus," I shrieked. Edward's head snapped to Remus. "You told them. It wasn't a question. Edward, let's go back to your house so I don't have to explain more than once. Guys, go out to the car and do not kill each other," I added firmly, pulling myself out of Edward's grasp. I was upstairs for 3 seconds, to grab my camera and my wand, when my phone rang. "Hello," I answered it. "Bella, are you okay?" Esme asked. "Esme, I'm fine. I'll explain everything when we get there." "Oh, and I'm bringing some guests. They're with Edward right now, so I'd better get downstairs before something bad happens." I had my camera around my wrist, my wand strapped to my leg, and I was heading downstairs as I spoke. "Okay, I'll see you soon." "See ya soon," I replied before snapping my phone shut. I stepped onto the porch to find Edward glaring at my uncle and Remus. Sirius was relaxing in the Volvo, acting like everything was perfectly normal, but I could tell he was impressed with the car. Remus just shut his eyes and leaned his head against the window. "I resent that, Bella," Edward sighed when I hugged him. "Edward, they would have figured it out anyway," I whispered, defending the 2 wizards in the car. "Get in," he whispered, leading me to the car and holding the door open for me. I sat down and, once he was driving, tried to ease his tight grip on the steering wheel. He released one hand, and I clasped it in both of mine. It was completely silent the whole ride there. Blank, underscore, blank. Alice was sitting on the steps when we pulled in the drive. Her face was completely impassive, but she greeted me with a hug when we stepped on the porch. Her eyes were glittering, so I guessed she had a vision. Inside, she said to Sirius and Remus. Then, with one arm on my wrist, she pulled me inside with Remus behind us, followed by Sirius and Edward. I sighed internally. Everyone was waiting in the front room for us. Esme hugged me when I sat in the armchair. Bella, you sure gave us a scare. Emmett chuckled from the floor. Okay, guys, this is my uncle Sirius Black, my uncle. Sirius waved after he sat down, and Remus Lupin, one of Sirius's best friends and practically my uncle. They know. Edward said before I could get another word out. What? Rosalie screeched from the staircase. Here we go, Alice said under her breath. In an instant, Rosalie was in my face. Edward growled. Alice threw up her hands. Enough. They would have known the instant they saw Edward, anyway. They won't tell, unless they want to spill their own secrets. I looked at her, and she nodded. Yes, Bella, I just got the vision today. Right after Edward left, I sighed. First, let's get introductions out of the way. Rosalie was still giving me death glares. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She clutched her throat, eyes wide. Rose. Emmett was by her side before I could blink. I noticed that Sirius had pulled his wand out. Edward pinched the bridge of his nose. We know you can't speak. Sirius did something with his stick. Wand, I corrected. Yes, that, and now you can't talk. It's called Silencio. It's a silencing spell. I never wanted to tell you guys. Because you wouldn't have believed me, but I'm a witch. Remus is a wizard and he's a werewolf. Jasper growled, venom-coated teeth showing. Jasper, stop that. He's just like a regular wizard until the full moon, when he shifts. He takes a potion that makes him completely tame until the next morning. So please stop getting ready to attack, or I will have to hold you down. Emmett scoffed. How? I pulled out my wand and pointed it at Emmett. Levicorpus. Emmett was yanked up by his heel into the air. Crap. Believe me now. Yes, now please let me down. Nope, I'll keep you like that until I finish explaining. Sirius is an animagus, meaning that he can shift into one animal. His is a giant black dog, and he is what Alice saw in her vision. She's not like Trelawney, is she, Bella? Remus asked, groaning. Nope, her visions are based on people's decisions. If they change their minds, the whole future can shift. Jasper can manipulate and feel emotions, and Edward can read everyone's mind but mine. Why? Remus asked. I don't know. Apparently, I'm a freak. Bella, we knew that. You willingly hang out with 7 vampires, Emmett chuckled from where he spun by the chair. Liberacorpus, I thought. Emmett dropped like a stone, leaving a slight dent in the floor. Bella, he whined, if you really expect us to believe you're telling the truth about them, Rosalie Jerka. Her head toward Remus and Sirius, then they're going to have to show us themselves. She clapped her hands over her mouth. I can speak again. Yes, it was only temporary, Sirius chuckled. He OD up from the couch and shifted into the giant black dog. Esme gasped, Emmett cheered, and everyone else's expressions were somewhere in the middle. The only ones not affected were Remus, Alice, and I. Okay, you already know Emmett. Jasper, Alice, Rosalie, and Edward, so Esme's the one next to Carlisle, the blonde. He's a doctor, I told Remus. His eyebrows raised. Don't ask. He's had a lot of practice. By the way, Carlisle. I wanted to ask you if you ever met Professor Dumbledore. I turned to Carlisle as I spoke. No, why? Just wondering. I thought you might have met him sometime in England. How old is he, Remus? Like 300. Sirius barked in laughter before turning human, still laughing. Remus chuckled. I'm serious. He's got a crooked nose, wears half-moon-shaped glasses. Has a long white beard and hair as long as mine. Emmett laughed. No, sorry, Bella. Carlisle shrugged. I sighed. No harm in asking. So, Sirius, what are Harry, Ron and Hermione up to? Oh, those 3. Sirius chuckled. It may not come as a surprise to you, but Ron and Hermione hooked up, as did Harry and Ginny. It took a second for the information to sink in, then I jumped up. Say what? Sirius nodded, smirking. I'll kill them. Sirius, mirror, please. I held out my hand and he tossed the mirror to me. I caught it perfectly. The Cullens' eyes widened. Tell you later. Then I looked at the mirror and said clearly. Harry Potter. The glass no longer reflected my face, but reflected the other mirror's surroundings. Harry was there in an instant. Hey, Bella, how's Washington? Get the others, please, I requested. In no mood for chit-chat. Harry's face turned wary. Ron, Hermione, come here, please. He called. I heard bustling, then red-headed Ronald Weasley and bushy-haired Hermione Granger were looking over Harry's shoulder. They were grinning. Their faces turned fearful, however, when I said my next words. I'm going to kill you. Harry did it. Ron cried immediately, pointing at his best guy friend. Everybody in the living room laughed. Oh, no you don't. This is not my fault. Bella, Harry asked, turning to me, what the hell is your problem? You're now a full-fledged witch, shouldn't you be happy? No, Harry, not when I have to find out from my uncle that you are dating Ginny and Ron is dating Hermione. I sneered. Their faces paled. We're sorry Bella, but we didn't know how to tell you. Hermione whispered. Yeah, and we're not the only ones keeping secrets from you, Ron mumbled. What? I hissed. Emma chuckled. I made a good imitation of a vampire, seeing as I was still human. Remus. Explain. Don't blame him, Bella, I didn't even know until I got to the burrow, Harry said before Remus opened his mouth. Alice giggled and Edward snickered. Well, see, I kind of married Tonks. It was a very small wedding, very few people knew, he said before I could start yelling. Just the order in Tonks's family. I should hope so, I joked. So Remus got married, after all these years. Harry was dating Ginny, and Ron was okay with it. Ron and Hermione were dating. What is the world coming to? What do you mean, Bella? Jasper asked. Bella, who's with you? Turn the mirror around so I can see, Hermione demanded. That girl could get as scary as Alice when she was determined. I smirked. Brilliant, Bella, Alice squealed. Everyone turned to look at her. Well, Hermione, you're the genius, you tell me. I'll give you a hint. What is faster than a cheetah, has red and black eyes? Is pale like the snow and is beautiful and as the sunrise? They're young for eternity, their skin is like stone. But most curses don't work on them. Only fire is their foe. It rhymes. Phew, oh, and the eyes can also be golden black. Not another riddle. Harry groaned. I had enough of those during the Triwizard Tournament. Took me forever to get the bloody Sphinx's question right. Sometime during the riddle, Hermione had grabbed a quill and parchment. Now, she was scribbling it down before she forgot it. What are you doing? Rosalie hissed. Chill. Hermione would figure it out in a heartbeat, she's the smartest person in our year. I'm only second or third best. Third year, she figured out that Remus was a werewolf, and second year she figured out what was attacking the Muggle-borns at Hogwarts, right before she was petrified. If she saw you, she would know in an instant. Bella, I have to go now. Are you coming back to Hogwarts? Hermione asked. Yep, expect to see me at platform 9 3/4 on September 1st. Bella, did you like your presents? Harry asked, knowing what Hermione was going to do next. Yes, I loved them. I fingered the Gryffindor lion as I spoke. Thanks, you guys. No problem, let's go guys. I want to figure out what Bella's riddle means. Hermione was turning the riddle over in her mind. Bella, what have you done? The boys groaned. Revenge, I replied before handing the mirror to Sirius. He turned its handle 3 times, clockwise. Counterclockwise, clockwise. The mirror was back to normal again. Bella, you aren't leaving us, are you? Esme asked. Enough depressing talk. Present time. Alice cried before I could reply. She handed me a CD case. From me and Edward. You didn't spend money on me, did you? I asked with trepidation. Everybody else gets to spend money on you but me. Edward joked. How is that fair? Homemade are the best kind, Edward, I replied instantly. They made these with magic. A simple charm. Edward replied. Well, then you'll love this present, because I didn't spend a penny. I unwrapped the package and turned the CD case over in my hands. Once I opened it, I found that it was empty. Alice pressed play on the stereo they had down here. The room was filled with the sound of my lullaby. Everyone was transfixed by the music. Well, Sirius, Remus, and I were. Alice and Esme just closed their eyes and listened. Edward stayed still until it ended. Alice put the CD back in its case. Whoa, Sirius whispered. Who played that? Remus asked. I did. It's Bella's lullaby, Edward replied. They stared at me with wide eyes. I love it, thank you, Edward. I smiled at him. Could this day get any better? Well, aside from the fact that I was bad at 3 of my best friends, but my revenge was being executed as we speak. So here's your next present, Bella, Emmett said. It may not be a lullaby, but... I snatched the box out of his hand. Opening the lid, I saw one of the most brilliant things they could give me, a wooden bear, similar to the charms on my necklaces but 3 times larger. There was also a mood ring and a pocket mirror. Thanks, guys. I got up and hugged Emmett, seeing as how he is the only one of the 3 who could safely touch me without worrying about my blood. And he saw me as a sister. Okay, Carlisle and Esme's gift. Edward passed me the long, thin box. I peeked inside and couldn't make sense of the tiny print, until I saw the airline logo on top. Plane ticket vouchers, I asked excitedly. Everyone's mouths dropped open. I giggled and quickly found my camera, before this moment was lost forever. I snapped a shot, then everyone was in motion again. Bella is willingly accepting a gift that costs money. Sirius and Emmett asked in unison. She's up to something, Remus added. Who are you and what have you done with Bella? Edward asked. More importantly, do you like shopping and makeovers? Alice was clapping her hands. I grimaced. I draw the line at shopping and makeovers, Alice. I objected. But, zip it. I pointed my finger at her. These will help me see Renee before I go to England in 5 days. Bella, your school is all the way in England? Esme asked, distraught. She didn't want her family separated. I could see it in her eyes. Well, it's only for a year. I can send you letters often. I thought my tears would cut me off, but instead, the disruption was a loud popping noise. 2 other pops were in quick succession. Fred, George, what the hell are you 2 doing here? I asked, shocked. What? No, good to see you. Or, how's the joke shop coming along? Fred asked, frowning. Whoa, George whispered, looking around the room. Fred, check these people out. What are we, art exhibits? Emmett grumbled. Get used to it, I snickered. I looked at the 3rd person who apparated into the room. Her hair was bright pink and she wore a plain white t-shirt and jeans. That was a new one for her. She smiled when she caught my eye. Watch her, Bella. Tonks. Remus rose to greet her. What are you doing here? Well, Professor Dumbledore asked me to bring 2 Order members and get the 3 of you back to Britain, pronto. And he told me to give this to Bella. She handed me a rolled-up piece of parchment. I took it, curious, and noticed that Alice and Edward were grinning. Jasper must have felt their excitement, because he looked at them with a raised eyebrow. Open it, Bella, Alice cried. All eyes were on me except Fred and George, who were still ogling Rosalie and Alice watching me unroll the parchment slowly. Bella, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. I asked. Sirius has already told you that he was declared a free man. I also know that you are keeping company with at least 1 vampire. Therefore, please tell them that I wish to speak with them at the Leaky Cauldron on August 20th. This way they can come with you partway to get your school supplies. If they accept my proposal, and if your hint is correct, then they might be able to join you in buying a few supplies. Sincerely, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. I looked up at the Cullens' faces, focusing on Esme's and Edward's most. Looks like you're coming to England with me in 5 days. Bella, 5 days doesn't give Carlisle enough time to tell the hospital he's leaving, Esme replied doubtfully. But we'll work something out. Fred, George, stop gawking at Alice and Rosalie, Sirius chuckled. Fred shook his head like a dog. Tonks hit George on the side of the head. Sorry, they replied, blushing. Fred, George, Tonks, these are Edward, Alice, Jasper, Emmett, Rosalie, Carlisle, and Esme Cullen. Guys, the Weasley twins and Remus's wife. I glared mockingly at Tonks, who just stuck her tongue at me. Bella, these people are not human, Fred whispered to me. Where were you in Defense Against the Dark Arts 3rd year? I joked. Everything to make school life bearable, he replied. Why, they're vampires, goof, Tonks said, rolling her eyes. She turned her hair a deep purple. Whoa, how'd you do that? Emmett cried. Even Rosalie looked interested for once. I'm a metamorphagus, she replied. Say who do what now? I say that a lot when I don't understand something like math. Can't you see Emmett saying that? I can change my appearance, she summarized. Sirius is an animagus, which means he can turn into an animal when he wants to. We already showed them, Sirius told her. Yes, and then I found out that Harry was dating Ginny, Hermione and Ron are now officially a couple, you and Remus were married, and that the Cullens get to come to the Leaky Cauldron in 5 days. Why does he want to meet us? Jasper asked. He probably wants to talk to you about helping protect the students from the Death Eaters and Voldemort, Sirius said. Made sense. After all, vampires were virtually indestructible. Charlie's going to call in 5 seconds, Alice announced. Everyone, be quiet. Right on cue, my phone rang. Hi, Dad, I said nervously into the phone. Hey, Bells, I just called to tell you that you can stay with the Cullens this weekend. I'll be in Seattle for a police class. It's completely mandatory. I'll be gone until Thursday. Crap, he comes home the day after I leave. Dad, I just got a letter from my boarding school today, and they said that if I wanted to come back to give them a call, and they'd send someone over to pick me up. Charlie was silent for a while, then asked, when? I'm leaving on the 20th of August to get my school supplies. You get home the day after I leave. I frowned, hearing him sigh. I was planning on going fishing with Billy until 5, that's when I have to leave. Think you can convince Alice to let you hang out with your old man for a while? Poor Charlie, he sounded so sad. They only been living with him for about 7 months. Sure, Dad, no prob. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Love you, Bells. Love you too, Dad. I flipped the phone shut and sighed. Bella, you know that you can send him letters anytime. Wizards do have connections at the post office, you know, Tonks informed me. I know, I'll just miss him. I snorted as I thought of his cooking. I'm going to Hawaii to teach him to stop living on pizza when he's on his own before he gives himself a heart attack. Bella, I don't think you have to worry about that in the future. In a few days, Charlie will get a girlfriend. Her name is Caitlin and she is a cook at Seattle Grill and Steak. She'll keep him away from junk food, Alice reassured me. I gave her a small smile. I feel like such a bad daughter. No, you're a really good daughter for coming here to stay with him. You could have just stayed in England for the rest of the term, Sirius told me. Alice then declared it was time to serve the cake. Right after I finished and took my plate to the sink, I noticed Sirius scowling in Fred and George's direction. They held something behind their backs. Happy birthday, Bella, they cried, before tossing a cupcake still in its plastic. I looked at them, confused. What's a canary cream? Edward asked, puzzled. The twins' eyes widened. What the bloody hell? Oops. Edward's a mind reader, Alice is psychic. And Jasper can change and feel the emotions in the surrounding area, I summarized offhandedly. I tossed the cream to Sirius. Bella, George cried. Why'd you do that? No thanks, Bella, I've had one of those before. He hastily set it on the coffee table. What happens? Tonks, Emmett, Remus, and Jasper asked. You really want to see? I asked. They nodded. Toss it. Sirius reluctantly threw the canary cream back. Fred and George leaned forward eagerly. I stood up before biting into the small chocolate dessert. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I was covered in yellow feathers, like a canary. Almost everyone laughed. Hey Bella, can I call you Tweety Bird? Emmett choked out through his laughter. No, Putty Tat, I snapped. It'll molt in a few minutes. And right after it did, I used my wand to get rid of the feathers. Thanks, boys, I sneered to the cackling twins. Hey Bella, perfect imitation of Snape, Fred cried. Who? Carlisle asked. Potions teacher. He's got greasy hair, and he hates me and Harry, I told them. Sirius reminded me. Why, Fred, he's Snape. Who knows why he does anything? Asked. He hates Remus and me because I pulled a prank on him when we were younger that nearly got him killed, and he thinks Remus was in on it, Sirius said. Snape generally favors his students above all others. He's head of Slytherin House. I traced the serpent charm while I spoke. I held up the badger. Hufflepuff, their symbol is a badger, people with loyalty go there. I showed Alice the eagle. Ravenclaw, eagle, for wisdom, for geeks, Emmett asked. I glared. Jasper slapped his head lightly. No, my friend, Hermione, was almost sorted into Ravenclaw, but she was put in my house eventually. I held up the lion. Gryffindor, our symbol is the lion. And we're known for our bravery. No doubt about that, Jasper muttered under his breath. And the Slytherins, what are they known for? Esme asked. I smirked. Cunning. Draco Malfoy is there. Oh, are we talking about the kid now? George asked. Draco Malfoy is the son of Lucius Malfoy, Death Eater. They're basically Voldemort's followers who carry out his orders. After he fell, they went into hiding. Snape's an ex-Death Eater. How did he fall, and how is he back? Jasper asked. Always the soldier, Alice muttered under her breath. Just wondering what you guys are up against. And if you're coming with me to Hogwarts, you'll need to know everything about him. I sighed and began the story. Many people call him you-know-who or he who must not be named because he was so powerful 16 years ago. Hardly anyone can say his name without fear. He changed his name from Tom Riddle when he started taking over. He wanted to rid the wizarding world of Muggle-borns. Or, as scum like Malfoy called them, mudbloods. Fred interjected. Well, yes, Hermione's Muggle-born, though, and she's the best witch in my year. Anyway, Voldemort thinks the world will be better if Muggles non-magic people became slaves. It's terrible. Hundreds of people died, Muggles and wizards alike. Even magical creatures died, giants, goblins. Massive slaughter. Wizards were afraid for their families, for their friends, and for themselves. The Ministry of Magic was in chaos, Remus said, picking up the story. Death Eaters were everywhere. Nobody knew who to trust. Dumbledore was the only one Voldemort ever feared. So he set up a secret organization. The Order of the Phoenix. Sirius and I were in it, along with Lily and James Potter and others. We tried to stop Voldemort, but by that time, he was too powerful. And then Harry and I were born. Lily and James went into hiding with my mother. A little over a year later, Renee dropped me off at the Potter house. Voldemort came to kill us. James told Lily to go upstairs with us, while he held off Voldemort. I thought he couldn't be stopped, Alice said, confused. I shook my head. He couldn't. So while Lily took me and Harry upstairs, he killed James. Sirius said it bluntly, knowing I'd never be able to say the words out loud, knowing the reaction it would cause. Esme gasped. Jasper's face froze completely. Rosalie was mad. Why would he want to kill two innocent children? What, were you some threat to him or something? She raged. Emmett put a hand on her shoulder, but he was no longer in a joking mood. Yes, according to a prophecy made a few months before we were born, Harry would defeat the Dark Lord and I would defeat his most loyal follower while protecting those that I loved. Don't ask me what that last part means, it could be a number of things. I whispered. After he tossed my godfather aside like a freaking rag doll, I continued, clenching my fists so I wouldn't punch something, he came upstairs to get us. Lily begged for us to live. The son of a bitch laughed. Then he killed her, before he tried to kill us. No one knows how, or why, but the curse rebounded and he was a goner. Hagrid and Sirius came to the house before the Muggles showed, and Sirius took me back to Renee. I nodded to Sirius to tell the next part. I got Renee to promise me to take Bella out of the country, even though Voldemort was gone. She was there, though, to see her last brother get arrested. Bella was there, too. Bella and Harry encountered Voldemort in some form 3 times since then when they were 11, 12, and 14. That last year, Voldemort's Death Eater servant kidnapped Bella and Harry, used Harry's blood to help resurrect him, and once again tried to kill them. Harry's wand made Voldemort's show the last spells used. All of them were the killing curse. The images of the last people he killed appeared, including a student from Hogwarts and Lily and James. The images helped them escape. And they brought the body back to Hogwarts. And now he's back, almost as strong as last time, but he's even scarier. Most people don't want to believe he's back, but the Order's got some people convinced. This is probably why Dumbledore needs your help. Your kind are almost impervious to spells, save the fire spells and a few others. Maybe the transfiguration charms would work on you. Anyway, he knows that you would do anything to protect Bella and her friends, and since she's going back. Remus stopped, looking out the glass walls. I looked outside, but saw nothing of interest. The moonlight was shining through. But that was natural, I gasped. The moon. Guys, get away from Remus, Sirius ordered, realizing what was happening. He backed away, then shifted into the black dog. Tonks was beside me, with Edward in front of both of us. Sirius, he took his potion tonight. He's safe, I reminded them. Tonks relaxed against my side. I knew how she felt. It was exactly how I felt whenever Edward truly looked like a vampire. Remus's transformation was completing, his nose turning into a snout and his feet into paws. He shook his wolf head and looked around him with a snort. Edward relaxed in front of me. It's fine. Sirius changed back while Edward opened the back door. Remus was right behind him, nodding as he passed. I watched the wolf that was practically my uncle curl up into a ball and look up at the moon. Okay, why didn't he attack? Emmett asked, disappointed. He was probably looking for a fight tonight. He took a potion that allows him to keep his mind when he transforms, to be a tame wolf. He'll change back in the morning, don't worry, Tonks said, although she obviously was. We spoke for a few more hours, then I yawned and Carlisle declared that it was time that we went to bed. Fred and George claimed the guest room down the hall from Edward's room, and Sirius sprawled out on the couch, falling asleep instantly. I dragged my feet upstairs to Edward's room, brushed my teeth, changed clothes, and fell asleep on Edward's chest, all without saying another word. I blinked and groaned. "What time is it?" "A little after 8, Emmett replied. I started. He was right next to my ear. "What did you do that for?" I grumbled. "It was funny," was the reply. "Bella, oh, good, you're up. Tell Alice that I don't want my hair done. I can change it to whatever style I want." "But she won't listen," Tonks cried, bursting into the room. "Good grief," I muttered. "Tonks, I will tell you this once. Alice does not listen to other people's opinions, so just let her have her fun, and if you don't like it, change it." "I resent that," Alice shrilled. She appeared in the doorway holding a dark blue spaghetti strap shirt and jeans. At least she picked something practical today. "Shower now," she ordered, and she was gone. "Jasper, have you ever tried sending her to therapy?" I asked as if he was in the room. Emmett's booming laugh filled the room. "We've tried," Edward sighed from beside the bed. "She just saw what we were planning and used her powers of manipulation to convince us otherwise." "What? You never mentioned she could manipulate people," Tonks cried, panicking. I laughed. Remus knocked on the doorframe behind her. She jumped into his arms. "Remus, she can use the Imperious curse on us. Alice can't control your mind. She's just an expert at blackmail, threats, and puppy dog eyes." Edward chuckled. "Even worse." I sighed and tossed the covers off me. "Okay, I have to take a shower, then get a slight makeover. If I don't come back alive, Tonks can have my wardrobe. Remus can have my textbooks, Sirius gets anything Quidditch related, and Edward gets my novels and my music," I said in a serious tone. "She won't kill you. If she does, she's wolf meat," Edward assured me. "Good." Quote, "I'm not gonna kill her, so it's a moot point," Alice shouted. She sounded very offended. Blank. "There, that's not so bad, is it?" Alice asked sweetly 20 minutes later. "She made me a deal. No makeup, and I would have to wear whatever she wanted me to wear. She still did my hair, though. That was non-debatable. I was wearing faded designer jeans, a dark green 3/4 sleeve sweater, and black Converse. Jasper was the one who convinced her to let me wear those. My hair waved to the small of my back, similar to the way I usually wore it." "Not really, Alice. Thank you," I told her truthfully. Alice smiled, her eyes glazing over. She screamed slightly. "Alice!" Jasper came running up the stairs. I was really worried now. Whatever Alice had seen was enough to terrify her, and that was never good. "Dark, cloaks, floating, so cold, no happiness," Alice muttered to herself, making absolutely no sense. "Unless you had encountered them before." I ran to Edward's room, grabbed my wand, and booked it. "Sirius, Remus, Tonks, Fred, George, get up, we're about to have company," I shouted, running down the stairs as fast as I could. Holding the banner lightly, Edward was beside me in a flash. "What were those things in Alice's vision?" he asked. The other order members stopped in front of the stairs. Tonks had only gotten a new change of clothes similar to mine. Her shirt was purple because she could change her looks. Her hair was shoulder length and black with light blue streaks. "Who's coming, Bella?" Sirius asked. "We get to fight," Emmett asked, excited. "Emmett, you can't fight these." "Aw, man, no, you wouldn't be able to touch them. They'd just suck all the happiness from you," Alice cried, flyin' downstairs and coming to an abrupt stop 3 inches to my left, Jasper beside her. "Dementors," every wizard or witch in the room gasped. "When?" Esme asked, sounding kind of like Carlisle. Speaking of the father figure, he was at the hospital right now, doing whatever he needed to do to get permission to leave. Alice looked up, dread in her eyes. Now, as she spoke, the room got colder. I shivered. I always hated this part. At least I didn't have to listen to Lily scream again. The first time scared me out of my wits. The doorknob turned menacingly, like in one of those Muggle horror films. 5 Dementors swooped in, not touching the ground. Their scabby hands reached out, and I was paralyzed. "Come on, Bella, you've done this before," I told myself as I saw Jasper fall to his knees. "Tonks," Remus cried. One of the 5 had picked her up and was touching her neck. She shivered and moaned. Another was right on top of Sirius, and I noticed a third had picked up Jasper, getting as much fear and sadness as it could. One hand was at its hood, ready to perform its deadly kiss. No, Jasper, Alice shrieked, terrified at whatever she had seen. Maybe it was just the fact that strong Jasper was being held with ease by a faceless creature. I thought of Edward laughing with Ron, Harry, and Hermione. If he ever got to meet them. Holding the image in my mind, I cried, expecto patronum. Just as every Dementor with a victim lowered its hood, Remus and the twins echoed my cry. A jet of white light shot from my wand, a lioness forming in front of me. Fred had an owl swooping around him, George was guarded by a tiger. And Remus's wolf charged toward Tonks, driving back the Dementor. My lioness ran around the Cullens and Sirius and I, sticking closest to Edward whenever she passed him. 4 Dementors vanished, but another had taken refuge upstairs. Fred's owl followed it. I made sure that my Patronus was protecting the Cullens before the 5th one came from behind me and swept me off my feet, knocking me to my knees. It fled the house, bringing warmth in its wake. I stood up slowly, taking in Jasper's appearance especially. The others just appeared shaken, but Jasper was practically wilting in relief. What the hell was that? Rosalie was the first to speak. A Dementor. They feed on emotions, leaving their victim with no happy thoughts if you're around them long enough. Muggles can't see them, but they can feel them. I took a breath, then turned to Jasper. You feel better? He laughed humorlessly, completely terrified at whatever that thing under its hood was, but I'll just remember it for the rest of eternity, no big. I thought of Edward holding me, keeping me calm, and relaxed immediately. It had the desired effect. Jasper's shoulders loosened. Alice, beside him, hugged him tightly. Yeah, we're just lucky it didn't have time to kiss us, Sirius sighed. What? Emmett was completely grossed out. That basically means the Dementor sucks your soul out and leaves you as an empty shell. You think being a vampire is bad? Try not being able to say, do, feel, or know anything for eternity. You're nothing but a shell. And there's no cure. Once it's taken, you can't get your soul back. Remus spoke for me, cradling Tonks on his lap. Why come here, though? Voldemort would come to finish me off himself, Edward growled, because Harry and I have been nutty. But trouble for him for the last 6 years. Well, 16, if you want to get specific. As far as I know, he doesn't control them yet, Tonks added. And they don't know about the Cullens. So question is, who sent the Dementors to kill us? Everybody looked around at everyone else. But no one had any answers. The days flew by quickly, and before I knew it I was in my room with Alice and Jasper, packing. My clothes took up 2.5 bags by themselves, so I just threw a few books on top. Alice was kind enough to take the shoes in her bags. My last bag carried my music and the remainder of my Muggle books. My trunk had everything magic related, save my broomstick and wand, in it. Ready, Bella? Alice asked me. I looked around the room, snapped a picture with my camera, and nodded. Jasper took my bags out to the porch and loaded them in. I watched him from the window. He looked up and asked something. In a minute, Jazz. We'll meet you at home. Take the car, Alice said. She waited until Jasper was around the corner before she turned to me and held out her hand. I had been debating on which Cullen to show first. Edward would have been the easiest, but I wanted him to be surprised. I couldn't wait to see the look on Jasper's face when we beat him home. Hurry, Bella, we don't have much time. I grabbed Alice's wrist in one hand, my firebolt in the other, and pictured the Cullens' living room. I spun on the spot, pulling Alice with me. The air was squeezed out of my lungs for a second, then I could breathe again. I blinked my eyes open as I landed on something hard. Alice giggled beside me. I was flipped over onto my back before I could think. Great, whiplash. I looked up and realized that I had landed on Emmett's back, because he was standing over me, horrified. Bella, how did you get here? I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't hurt you, did I? No, Emmett, I'm fine. I sat up slowly and noticed that Rosalie, Remus, Sirius, Tonks and Alice were the only other people in the room. Fred and George had gone back to set things up at their house, only after they had promised to not tell anyone about the Cullens. Rosalie's mouth was sort of open. Alice had my camera in her hands. Spinning it, Sirius and Remus were grinning, and Tonks looked bored. Hey, I thought I heard. Jasper stopped as he walked into the house, looking at us in Aston. Ishment before looking out the door and back at us. He repeated this a few times, with Alice clicking away with the camera, before he could speak. But how? We apparated, Jasper, I told him. Remus told you about this, remember? We had told the Cullens virtually everything about the wizarding world, leaving out only my school adventures with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But I didn't realize you could get here so fast. Well, that's only because you guys are so close. It took us a whole 10 minutes to get here, Tonks said nonchalantly. I've got to be getting back. See you guys. She kissed Remus and disapparated. Can I try? Bella, please. Emmett, in case you've forgotten, we have to get going soon. London is 7 hours ahead of us, and it's 9 in the morning. Yes, this is accurate. I checked, which means, unless you want to wait to see the wizarding shops until tomorrow, we should go as soon as the others get back, Sirius added. I can hear them, just down the street, Rosalie said. I nodded. Ever since she figured out that I had my own secret to protect, we had been sort of getting along. She didn't sneer at me, or leave a room whenever I entered it. She was just indifferent, if nothing else. They're here, Alice said just as the front door opened. Edward was the first one in, and I smiled when he sat down next to me. His head flashed toward Emmett, confused. What are you hiding? What do you mean? Emmett asked innocently. Usually, you don't go around singing Carrie Underwood songs in your head unless you're hiding something. He looked at Sirius, who was smirking, to me, then Alice. And finally glared at Emmett. I can't leave Bella alone for 1 minute without her getting hurt, but you don't need to do it for her. He said in a low, dangerous voice. It was an accident, Emmett replied automatically. Esme looked between them and sighed. What happened? Emmett flipped Bella onto the couch and could have hurt her, Edward replied instantly. It wasn't my fault she apparated on me and I reacted. Emmett protested. You'd have done the exact same thing. I laughed a little. Emmett, it was an accident. Edward, he didn't hurt me. Now, ready to go to London. Edward opened his mouth to speak, but Alice cut him off. How are we going to get there? You can't apparate all of us there at once. Of course not. And since vampires burn in fire, that rules out flow powder. So that just leaves a portkey, Remus said, listing all the ways of quick and easy transportation. Unless they want to go on the night bus, Sirius added. Emmett pumped his fist in the air. I choose that one. Emmett, the night bus is an awful way to travel. In third year, Harry had to take that rickety old bus to the leaky cauldron and he told me he never wanted to ride in it again. I cringed at the memories. Of course we had to take you back 2 years later in the bloody thing, Remus added. So, no, he slapped Sirius on the head. Hey, why'd you give him the idea? Nothing good comes out of giving Emmett ideas, believe me, Jasper said. Hey, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure that Dumbledore is waiting for you guys. I stood up and tossed the pot lid to Remus. He pointed his wand at it and muttered, Quartus. It glowed a faint blue, then was normal again. Everyone got everything. We're leaving in 5 minutes, Remus told them. There was a flurry of activity. And the Cullens had their suitcases and ours next to whoever owned it. Alice handed me my firebolt carefully. I took it and grabbed a box of fudge rounds from the kitchen. I opened the box and tossed one to Remus and Sirius, and kept one for myself. I put the others in a less empty bag. My CDs will be fine, won't they? Edward looked at the small case of his top 50 favorite CDs strapped to his shoulder. Yes, and if they're not I will personally restore them for you. I think Arthur is working on a magically powered CD player, Remus replied. Edward raised his eyebrows. Electronics don't work at Hogwarts. Oh, man, are you for real? No styling your hair, how do you people survive? Alice cried. Alice, calm down. First of all, you don't need to style your hair every day. You're a vampire. Second, we can style our hair with magic, I assured her. Yes, no more Bella Barbie. As if she knew what I was thinking, Alice glared at me and whispered, I still get to pick out your clothes. I gulped and turned to Jasper. Help, I mouthed. He just grinned, amused. Okay, everyone put one hand on the lid or even a finger and hold your stuff with the other, too. NKS ordered as the pot lid glowed a brighter blue than before. Everyone had at least a finger on it. I clutched my bag handle and the firebolt tighter. 3, 2, 1. And we were spinning. Our feet flew off the ground. And the only thing keeping us from hurtling toward the earth was our fingers glued to the lid. I heard Emmett whooping and Alice laughing. Edward's bag kept hitting mine, and my eyes watered. Then it was over. My feet connected with solid ground, and I swayed. Edward caught me before I sunk into a heap on the ground. As soon as my head stopped spinning, I set my stuff down and looked around. We were in an office. The setting sun shone through the windows. On a table was a bunch of scientific-like things. Portraits lined the walls. Their occupants were either asleep or glancing at us curiously. Good thing we'd thought to warn the Cullens about pictures being able to move. A staircase led to another landing, and a tattered old hat sat on a cupboard top nearby. "Remus, why are we in Dumbledore's office?" I asked softly. Some of the portraits of the old headmasters and headmistresses stirred and blinked. Well, well, well. Sirius Black, one of the portraits said. Sirius grimaced. "Fancy meeting you here, Phineas." "Well, I do live here, you know," the old Slytherin headmaster sneered. Phineas Nigellus, one of the other portraits said, cutting off Sirius's retort, "Leave them alone." Phineas shrugged. The old headmistress turned to us. "Sorry about that, he can be a little proud at times." "What's his deal?" Emmett whispered. "He was a Slytherin headmaster." "Let's just leave it at that," Sirius whispered back. Nearby, a cat purred, and there was a flutter of scarlet feathers on a perch. "Fox," I greeted the phoenix. I walked over to him and stroked his beak. He closed his eyes. "That's a phoenix?" Carlyle asked. "Yep, Professor Dumbledore's phoenix, Fox. He actually saved Harry's and my life at more than one point," I told them. "Are you going to tell us the story behind that?" Jasper asked. I knew it was bugging them, but it was fun keeping secrets. Especially around Edward and Alice. "When we see Harry, Hermione, and Ron," I said. Something brushed up against my leg. I looked down and saw a pair of brown eyes gazing up at me. The cat's coat was pure black, and on the top of his head a little tuft of hair stuck up. "James," I cried in delight, scooping my cat into my arms. Edward raised his eyebrows at the name. "Bella, you never told us you had a cat," Alice said reproachfully. "Remus got him for me for Christmas third year, the same year he taught at Hogwarts," I said. "He was just a kitten, but he got along really well with Crookshanks, Hermione's cat. And he has feelings about people. If he doesn't like them, he'll hiss at them." When I walked into the shop, all the cats started hissing and spitting except for him. "He just purred and let me pet him," Remus said. I grinned, remembering the first time I heard the story. Hermione, Ron, Harry and I had laughed for at least 5 minutes. "Do you think he'll like me?" Alice asked timidly. I shrugged and spoke to James. "Can Alice pet you?" He looked at her with his eyes, watching her. He hopped down. "Stay still and let him sniff you," I advised. She listened to me, turning as still as a statue. James sniffed her leg, pulled his head back, and slowly sniffed the hem of her pant leg. He purred, looking up at her. She giggled and slowly, for her, picked him up. She scratched his ears and he purred louder. "He's so sweet," Alice cooed. "Yes," I agreed. I noticed James was sniffing Jasper's sleeve, which was right next to his face. He didn't pull back, choosing instead to rest his head on Jasper's elbow. "James likes you, Jasper." "Okay, why did you name him James in the first place, Bella?" Emmett asked, unnerved. "He looks like Harry's father. Same eyes, same hair color, and James's hair was messy as well," Sirius explained. Something knocked on the window. Rosalie opened it a little to let an owl fly in. Her feathers were an auburn red color, and she was as big as Hedwig. Her eyes were a bright green, and she landed on my shoulder when she saw me. "Hi, Lily," I whispered. I stroked her head with a finger. She hooted in greeting. She focused on James, who was traveling around the Cullens, sniffing their legs. Edward was the last one to be checked, and when James sniffed him he purred before pawing at his leg. Edward bent down and picked him up. Lily eyed him apprehensively. "It's okay, Lily, they're not going to hurt you," I soothed. She swiveled her head to look at me, confused. "These are the Cullens. You want to go say hi?" I asked. She turned her head to the side, toward Esme. She took off, barely scraping my shoulder, and landed on Esme's. Esme was astonished. She hesitantly held up her finger to stroke her beak. When Lily hooted and made no attempt to leave her new perch, I grinned. "Well, Lily and James like you. You seem very popular today," I told her. Edward walked beside me and handed James back to me. He grumbled in protest, hooking his claw into Edward's shirt. "Smart cat. Don't ruin that shirt," Alice warned. James just shot her a look, as if to say, "What are you going to do about it?" I hid a smile. "Someone's coming," Edward sighed suddenly. I looked at the door with Remus and Sirius. The door swung open to reveal an old man in long, flowing wizard robes, half-moon spectacles perched precariously on the end of his crooked nose. His beard and hair flowed and shone in the moonlight pouring in through the window. His blue eyes twinkled. "Professor Dumbledore," I greeted him. "Bella," Professor Dumbledore replied. "Sirius, Remus, Then he turned to the Cullens. And you must be the vampires I've heard so much about. I wasn't expecting you to show up here in my office. Blame Remus. He performed the spell, I said. Excuse me, sir, Alice piped up, but how do you know about us? We've never met you before. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. I have my ways. He has spies, Edward explained. They kept an eye on Bella for him. Well, that was new. What do you mean? I was spied on. I blushed as I realized how many private moments somebody could have watched while I was with Edward. Lovely. Relax, love. I would have sensed someone, Edward reassured me. I breathed a sigh of relief. Actually, it was Angela Weber who sent us the information. Quote, wait, what? I knew Angela was a witch, but she was homeschooled. Yes, Angela and her mother have been sending me owls with your progress. In Phoenix, Remus kept me updated. But since you moved to Washington, I contacted an old student of mine. Her daughter was only too happy to keep an eye on you until you adjusted to Forks. And when she saw you hanging out with the Cullens, she told me. Nobody in Forks knows your secret, but her description of you guys told me all I needed to know. That, and the riddle Bella gave Hermione. I was visiting the burrow. At the precise moment you were talking to your friends on the mirror. Interesting, isn't it? Once Bella turned 17, I sent Fred and George to invite you guys to England. It was not just to help protect the students. But Bella knows and trusts you. Who better to defend Hogwarts? I raised my eyebrows. We're not exactly defenseless, Professor. Yes, but what would you do if you were Outnum? Beard 5 to 1 and nobody was there to help you. I pursed my lips, he had me there. So, will you stay? Dumbledore asked the Cullens. What will we need to do? Carlisle asked. Just make sure nothing major happens to the students. Bella and Harry especially. Voldemort will do anything to get his hands on them, then he'll kill them. I grimaced. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Professor. Bella, if he gets to you or Harry, you won't stand a chance against him, Dumbledore told me patiently. I noticed the Cullens having a discussion, and I had a feeling I knew the outcome. Well, I'm staying with Bella. Edward sighed finally. James rubbed his head on Edward's chest, purring again. I'm not leaving Bella behind. Plus, I can see if anything is heading our way, Alice declared. Dumbledore nodded. Bet you 10 galleons the twins were here and told him what powers the Cullens have, I whispered to Sirius and Remus. No doubt, Remus told me. Roughly translated, he wasn't betting. Nah, I think it was Tonks. Sirius disagreed. You're on. I looked back at everyone else when Lily hooted happily and flew to Remus's shoulder. It's settled. Bella can take you to Diagon Alley tomorrow. Oh, and then you can spend the rest of summer vacation at the Weasleys' place, Dumbledore exclaimed. You can get your money turned into wizard coins at the bank. Oh, Carlisle, would you like to teach vampire history? It will be a required course for every year. What, Professor? I didn't know we offered that class. I was confused, and apparently I hadn't missed much, because everyone but Edward, Alice, of course. And Carlisle looked confused. Yes, I would be honored. Esme, would you be so kind as to teach Muggle studies this year? Esme looked sort of flustered, but nodded. Bella and Hermione can explain what you need to do. It shouldn't be hard, seeing as how you blend in with the Muggle community in Forks so well. And the rest of us will play the role of students? Alice asked. Sort of. You can participate in potions, herbology, care of magical creatures and divination if you wish. The other classes will only require you to sit and observe, except for in Carlisle's class. He will need you for demonstrations. After all, I will tell the students what you are, and what your feeding habits are, if you wish. I'll tell them in class, Carlisle said. That'll be interesting, Jasper smirked. Wonder how many of them are going to jump and or faint when they hear we're vampires. I laughed. That'll be a sight to see. I'll have to make sure I give someone a camera. And we can help Esme in a couple of her classes, Alice piped up. That's fine. He went behind his desk and removed one list of supplies that they would need. He handed it to Carlisle. Alice squealed. We get to go to a dance. Yes, and I may not be clumsy anymore, but I still despise dancing, I grumbled. Edward's eyebrow rose. Oh, right, apparently, my clumsiness was a curse and when Remus came to my house, he removed it. I have Professors Flitwick and McGonagall to thank for that. Emmett laughed. Well, no human could be that clumsy by themselves. Okay, are we going to sleep here tonight or are we going to go see the Weasleys? Sirius asked, annoyed slightly with the chit-chat. I nodded, turned around, and looked for our bags. Only my firebolt lay on the carpet. I picked it up, confused. Where'd the bags go? Fox took them to the burrow for you. I'm surprised, Bella. How did you not notice? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Well, the bags were behind us, and we were busy listening to you guys talk. So it was very easy to become distracted. I looked at the broom in my hand giddily. Hey guys, you want to fly to the burrow? Emmett and Alice cheered. Edward and Jasper looked interested. Carlisle, Esme, and Rosalie looked cautious. I call riding with Bella. Alice cried before Emmett could open his mouth. Professor, is it all right if we borrow some of the school's brooms? I asked. He nodded. I grinned, opened the door of the office. James leapt from Edward's arms finally and led the way down the steps. Remus followed, and then the Cullens. Bye, Professor. I'll send the brooms back when we get there. See you on the first, I said as everyone passed me and headed down the stairs after James. Bella, I turned around at his voice. His eyes twinkled. Fred told me, he said. I grinned, nodded my thanks, and followed everyone out the door. Sirius, I called as I reached the bottom. He looked up. I win. Damn it. Blank, underscore, blank. After finding 6 brooms, I passed them out. Emmett and Rosalie rode the sturdiest of the bunch, a clean sweep 14. Jasper and Alice, still upset that she didn't get to ride with me, climbed on a Nimbus 2000. Carlisle and Esme chose a shooting star, and Sirius and Remus each rode Nimbus 2001s. Edward rode with me on my firebolt. James was bundled in Carlisle's jacket and rode in a backpack I conjured on Alice's back. I kept the top opened a bit so he could get air, but not enough that he would fall out of the bag. Lily flew behind us, her cage waiting with the rest of the luggage at the burrow. The Cullens got used to flying by hovering in the air, then flying around the grounds for a bit. Everybody ready? I asked after they came to a stop several feet off the ground. They nodded. Sirius, Remus, and I were already in the air, so we took off into the night. I outstripped them once we got high enough to be sure the muggles wouldn't see us from the ground, and laughed at Emmett's cry of disbelief. Edward was holding onto my waist, getting used to flying without walls around him. It only took us a few hours to get there. We agreed that Remus would take the brooms back while the rest of us were in Diagon Alley. I pulled out of my dive, skimming my toes on the grass just a little farther from where the lights from the house reached. Emmett laughed softly at the crooked house held together by magic. All right, I whispered after I extracted James from the backpack, I want you guys to hide so that. The front door burst open and 2 figures rushed onto the lawn. Isabella Marie Swan, Harry and Ron cried simultaneously, lighting the yard with their wands. The Cullens faded into the night. Hi, boys, I said when they were right in front of me. Bella, why did you give Hermione that riddle? She's been driving us absolutely batty. Ron yelled. Like I said, revenge. I shrugged. Mrs. Weasley came out on the porch. Ron, she hissed. We have people who are trying to sleep. She smiled at me. Hello, Bella, your bags are in Ginny's room. I hope you don't mind, all the other rooms are full. Dumbledore told us we were having guests. Hermione barreled out of the house, bypassing Mrs. Weasley and the boys and tackling me to the ground. Bella, she squealed. You have to tell me. I've looked everywhere. Well, first I need to breathe, I choked. Hermione let me up. Her eye caught something over my shoulder, and her face paled. I turned around and saw Edward right behind me. I jumped. Edward, don't do that, I breathed, trying to calm my racing heart. Hermione's wand was out when I turned around. Bella, that's Hermione gulped. Since when have you been hanging out with vampires? Say what? Ron gasped. Harry raised his wand. Harry, don't. I grabbed his arm before he did something he would regret. Wow, Bella, you were right, she is smart, Alice giggled, emerging from the darkness. She looked Hermione in the eyes. Hermione sighed in relief. Why don't we all go inside? Mrs. Weasley suggested. She hadn't moved from her spot on the porch. Hey Molly, did Dumbledore tell you about the Cullens? Remus asked as we came within earshot of her. She nodded. Bella, how many are there? Harry asked from behind me. I looked around. Alice was right beside Hermione, with Jasper behind her. Edward was next to me, and Emmett, Rosalie, Carlisle and Esme were walking toward the house. Just the 7. Quote, we already had dinner, Mrs. Weasley said as we walked into the kitchen. But I can make you some soup if you'd like. Yes, please, I accepted the invitation as my stomach growled. Sirius and Remus nodded. While I was eating, Carlisle made introductions. Ginny slipped into the kitchen at one point, hugging me before looking at the Cullens. So this is what they were going on about, she said. I knew Mum was hiding something from them, because Ron was begging her to spill the mystery. Hermione searched every book in this house. Guess where she found the answer? The Monster Book of Monsters, I guessed. Bingo. Alice huffed. We're not monsters. Need I remind you of James and Victoria? I raised an eyebrow. Okay, not all of us are monsters, she relented. Harry looked at me quizzically. I blushed. The nomad vampires who tried to kill me, I whispered. Where was your wand? Hermione asked. I blushed harder and mumbled. What? Under my bed? It sounded like a question. Bella, Hermione shrieked. How could you? Don't you know anything about vampires? We didn't exactly study them, Hermione, I reminded her. Werewolves, yes. Vampires, no. And you weren't even supposed to learn about them, Remus chuckled. Bella, that you? Someone called. Mr. Weasley walked into the crowded kitchen. Hello, you must be the vampires Albus told us about. Carlisle Cullen. Carlisle introduced himself, holding out his hand. Mr. Weasley shook it for a brief second before dropping it. My wife Esme, and my children Jasper, Alice, Edward, Emmett, and Rosalie. Fascinating. Here we go, Ginny moaned under her breath. Alice and I hid our smiles and braced ourselves for questioning. I thought vampires had covens, not families, Hermione said. A note of confusion in her voice. Normal vampires do, Jasper said. Then again, normal vampires are nomads and drink human blood. We do move around from time to time, but only once every few years. We drink animal blood, so that's what Carlisle thinks keeps our bond tighter than normal covens, Alice said. And Carlisle's always right, I whispered to Ginny, rolling my eyes. She giggled. I read that vampires sometimes have extra powers, Mr. Weasley said. Yes, Carlisle said, Alice, Edward, and Jasper each have a special ability. I'm an empath, Jasper said. I can also change your emotions. Really? Harry asked dubiously. Yes, you'll see in a few weeks, he answered mysteriously. Ginny, Harry, Hermione, and Ron looked at me, confused. I hid a grin. Sirius leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and watched, amused, with a large smirk on his face. Remus leaned against the doorframe. I'm teaching a new class. It's required, since we'll be at school with you all year, Carlisle told them. And I'm teaching Muggle studies, Esme said. Hermione lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh, that's one of my favorite classes. Do you have everything you need? If you need any help. Hermione, Ginny practically shouted, cutting her off. Tone it down a bit, will you? Grief, we're not even at school yet. Hermione blushed. Sorry, Ginny Weasley, no more shouting, Mrs. Weasley said sternly, her eyebrows raised. Ginny bowed her head. Sorry, Mum, sorry, Hermione. Hermione nodded. Apology accepted. Any other powers we need to know about? Ron asked. Edward grinned. Emmett snickered. Prepare to be freaked, Rosalie smirked. What? Hermione looked between all of the Cullens and me, her eyebrows knitted in suspicion. I put my bowl in the sink and leaned back against the counter in a combined mirror image of Remus and Sirius, right down to my uncle's smirk. What do you think my power is? Edward asked. Ron thought for a minute. Nope, sorry, wrong again. Edward answered each of his unspoken guesses. Ron's eyes widened. Mind reader, Ginny breathed. Ha, your sister is better at riddles than you. I laughed. Ginny's head swung around. He can read your mind. Nope, I popped the P, smugly. Makes sense, Hermione said. Harry and the Weasleys turned to her, wide-eyed. Remember fourth year, Professor Mooney's class? She elaborated. Harry seemed to understand, but Ron was still lost. Hermione huffed. Mooney was an impost. Hermione, I whined. I've been keeping that from them for a reason. So we can tell them our stories from day one as a group. Hermione rolled her eyes. Sheesh, Bella, relax. Fine, no thinking it, I warned. What are we going to do with you? She sighed. I pouted. All right, I'll explain when we tell them about fourth year. Thanks, Hermione. I grinned madly. Edward groaned. It must get annoying. Can't you shut it off? Ginny asked sympathetically. We wish. The Cullen siblings chorused. I have to hear every thought they're thinking. He does it just because he can. Not true, you shout them half the time. It's completely annoying, we can't keep any secrets. I try not to hear them. Whenever I'm planning something, I have to keep it hidden, very difficult. Because it usually means trouble for me and or Bella. Unless we ramble about random crap in our minds or think about our nights. Emmett, please. Edward pinched the bridge of his nose. I do not need that image floating around my brain. Enough. Carlisle spoke in a normal tone, but everyone was silent at once. Whoa, Ron breathed. It's nice to know someone listens to their parents, Mrs. Weasley muttered crossly, glancing at Ron from the corner of her eye. He flushed. Hermione, your cat's coming, Alice said suddenly. An orange streak flashed across the floor, closely followed by a black one. Crookshanks, Hermione cried as her cat hopped on the table. Down. Crookshanks turned his flattened face in her direction but didn't get off. Choosing instead to slink over to Sirius. He scooped Hermione's cat into his arms and rubbed between Crookshanks's ears. The cat purred. James meowed from my side. I swear. He was rolling his eyes when I looked down. How'd you do that? Harry asked. Alice grinned. I can see the future. You're not a fraud, are you? Harry and Ron both looked at each other, eyebrows raised. Remembering Trelawney again. All my visions can be changed if you change your mind. Alice clicked her tongue. Honestly, don't you trust me? No, Ron muttered. Oh, but you will. You'll see, Alice said wisely. Blank, underscore, blank. As when Sirius and Remus first met the Cullens, we underwent over an hour of questioning. Hermione nearly had a heart attack when she learned I was Edward's singer. Bella, you're a worse danger magnet than Harry, Ron groaned. Put the two of them together, it's a miracle they're not dead yet, Remus added with a chuckle. And when they found out Carlisle was a doctor. Wait. You willingly torture yourself day after day, just to help muggles. Ron said, appalled. It doesn't hurt. Carlisle shook his head in amusement. His doctor skills kept me alive when I was tracked by the Nomad, James, I said. Tell us the whole story, and don't leave out any details that are important. My wizard friends commanded. Okay, I went to play baseball with the Cullens. Vampires play baseball, Hermione asked disbelievingly. What's baseball? The Weasley siblings asked. Yes, we play baseball. And if there's a storm, maybe you can watch a game. Esme laughed. Now, they were in the middle of a game when 3 nomads stepped out of the trees. Alice saw them too late, and I couldn't run. I didn't have my wand. And the Cullens didn't know I was a witch. So I had to wait. The coven leader, James, Edward hissed when I spoke his name, and my cat's ears twitched, decided to track me. Alice and Jasper took me to Phoenix. While Rosalie and Esme watched Charlie and Edward, Emmett, and Carlisle hunted James. I stayed in a hotel room for a couple of days and then I got a call from James, pretending to be holding my mother. So I told him I'd call him when I got to my old house. Alice had a vision of me dying, Edward and Alice both winced, and told Jasper. She was panicked, so I knew she probably saw me dead. I left a note for Edward and when we went to the airport to pick the guys up, I ducked into a bathroom with 2 exits. I got lost there once, so I knew where it was. I got to the house and called him. Then met him at the ballet studio a few blocks away. He told me about the one that got away, just to gloat. Then he videotaped himself attacking me. He held off for a while, long enough for the Cullens to get there. He bit my hand, but Edward sucked the venom out before it could spread. I fell asleep, they took me to a hospital, and the rest is history. I shrugged at the end. Harry groaned. Bella, Ron and Remus are right. It's a miracle you aren't dead yet. My favorite was when they found out my clumsiness was a curse that was removed. Really? Hermione gasped. I suspected something, but I wasn't positive. That's great. Now you can manage your feet as well as you do a broom, Harry said. I blushed. At least she still blushes as bad as me, Ron and Ginny mumbled. Blank, underscore, blank. After many more questions mostly about the changes in the technology and medicine the Cullens have seen over the years, I yawned. Bed, Mrs. Weasley ordered. But Mum, Ron and Ginny protested. She fixed them with an unblinking stare that made them silent. They sighed. You can hear more when you go shopping tomorrow. That does not mean you can buy out the whole store, Alice. Other students need supplies and clothes, too, Esme said with her eyebrows raised. Alice huffed. Bella, you can sleep in Ginny's room. Fred and George already have your bags up there. Good night. I smiled and winked. Harry, Ginny, Hermione, Ron, and I went upstairs to bed. I heard Mr. Weasley asking them about other Muggle contraptions. I heard Mr. Weasley. Edward came up after a while, after Ginny was asleep. I smiled into his shoulder as he hummed my lullaby, sending me to dreamland. Blank, underscore, blank. Bella, Alice said when I walked into the kitchen in the morning, we haven't seen your scar. I didn't remember it until last night, with everything going on. Almost all the other Cullens nodded in agreement. I sighed. All right, Alice. Just let me change. I ran upstairs and changed into a light blue spaghetti strap shirt, jeans, and tennis shoes. I grabbed my wand. You never knew when you'd need it, even in the Weasley house. On the way down, I passed Hermione. Hey, Hermione. Hey Bella, what's for breakfast? Don't know, but you know Ron'll eat almost everything. She rolled her eyes. Tell me about it. I haven't missed him talking with his mouth full, I can tell you that. We reached the bottom step. Alice popped out of nowhere. Let me see. I sighed and Hermione looked amused as I lifted my shirt away from the heart-shaped scar on my hip. Alice ran her finger over it. It was as cold as her hand, which came as a shock to her. Alice, give her a break. I'm sure she doesn't want people looking at it too much. I turned to find Carlisle behind her. Hermione was clutching her chest. A little warning next time, won't you? Sorry. Emmett was laughing from the kitchen. Bella, Molly's made breakfast. Sirius peeked in to see what was keeping me. Okay, Sirius, thanks. Do I smell food? Ron moaned from the top of the stairs. I turned around and saw him bound down the stairs, skimming by us to reach the kitchen. Hermione huffed, her mouth open. Oh, hi girls, he called after we heard clattering come from the room he just entered. Alice looked amused. He went straight for the bacon and eggs, didn't he? Hermione and I asked together. She shook her head, grinning wickedly. The biscuits. A door slammed as she spoke. I shrieked and burst into the other room with Hermione. She went to the counter. No more biscuits. Ronald Weasley, we cried. He was nowhere to be seen, but the Cullens, Sirius, Remus, and Mrs. Weasley sat at the table. Where'd he go? I asked. Emmett pointed to the door, which led outside. Thanks, I called, following Hermione outside. She stomped over to him. The fool sat in the middle of the yard with his back turned. Ron, give me the bye, she gasped. In his hand was one little, precious biscuit. My mouth watered at the thought of Mrs. Weasley's homemade, soft, crispy buttermilk biscuits. Way better than Pillsbury's any day. And she only made them on special occasions. You ate the rest, I breathed. He nodded and put the biscuit to his lips. Hermione tackled him and the biscuit landed neatly on the plate. I tiptoed over and reached for it. A pale hand snatched it from me before I even got to touch it. Emmett, I cried. He was grinning when I looked up. Can you please give me the biscuit? I pulled out the Alice eyes. He turned it over and put it to his lips. I whimpered, knowing it had got to waste. He laughed and tossed it at me. Here, time seemed to move in slow motion. The biscuit was flying toward me. A mass of black fur leapt up and caught it neatly in its mouth. The creature landed softly on his paws and immediately picked apart the biscuit, splitting it with the orange cat. Everything sped back up. No, I cried. I sat there, sobbing over the loss of my precious biscuit. Bella, I looked down and gasped. James and Crookshanks looked at me funny. Why are you crying? Is it because I got the biscuit? James asked. I gasped. My cat was talking to me. Holy crap, what's wrong, Bella? Crookshanks asked. Cat got your tongue, blank, underscore, blank. I sat up, gasping. Bella, Alice called. Breakfast. She peeked in to see what was keeping me. What's wrong? Was I asleep this entire time? Yes. Why? She looked at me suspiciously. What were you dreaming about? What did I say? Something about a biscuit. Oh, so it was all dream then. You know, Bella, I think you're getting my power. Alice started picking out my outfit for the day. Why? Because Molly and Esme made biscuits. Blank, underscore, blank. Ost 3 hours later after I showed them my scar, leading to a few dozen questions about it. Very few were answered. We were on the night bus headed toward Diagon Alley. I looked over my book list for the 10th time. I wasn't too happy with one book on the list, Defensive Magical Theory by Wilbert Slinkard. Don't ask me why, I just had a strange feeling about whoever assigned this book. And it wasn't a good one. The Leaky Cauldron, the conductor, Stan Shunpike, called out. Me, Sirius, Remus, Hermione, Harry, Ginny, Ron, Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, and the Cullens stepped off the bus. We didn't have any luggage. Save for small bags to carry our money in. I still had several coins left over from last year. I wanted to buy Hermione a birthday present. It was her birthday next month. Alice and Esme were going to help me pick something out. The room went silent as we walked in. Everyone stared at the Cullens as they glided by, awestruck. When Harry and I walked by with the Weasleys, they started whispering. Great. We were still considered crazy. I noticed they all fell silent when Sirius and Remus passed them. I turned and saw a few even glaring at my uncle. Why, he was declared a free man, everybody said so. It might be because Sirius spent 12 years in Azkaban and the next 3 on the run. I sighed. Harry turned to me, hearing the sigh. You'd think we'd get over it, right? I snorted. Fat chance. Until they realize we're actually telling the truth. I crashed into Emmett and nearly fell. Remus caught me. I asked Emmett what was wrong, and I noticed we stood outside. Near a brick wall. I grinned. It was a good thing it was cloudy. Welcome, I heard Ginny say, to Diagon Alley. There's nothing here, Emmett said, confused. All the wizards and witches in the group laughed. That's what you think, Ron said mysteriously. Mr. Weasley took out his wand and tapped a brick on the wall. The bricks began to move, and soon there was a doorway in front of us. We stepped through. There were wizards and witches, both overage and underage, moving around. There were so many shops, too. I laughed as Rosalie flipped her head back and forth, trying to take in everything at once. Holy crap, Emmett said softly. It's amazing, Jasper breathed. Yeah, Edward agreed. So many shops, guess who? Alice. Does everyone have the same reaction the first time they see this place? I asked Ron, who stood next to me. Pretty much. Okay, Mr. Weasley announced, first stop's Gringotts. Then you can split up, but we have to meet at Flourish and Blots by 4, Mrs. Weasley said. Yes, Mum, Ginny and Ron said. And we've got to go to Fred and George's shop. Sirius reminded us. I laughed. Remus shook his head. Sirius, we can go there last. School supplies first, then joke shop. Sirius frowned, but gave in. Can we meet up at the joke shop instead, Molly? She thought about it, then nodded. Sirius laughed. Carlisle, I might as well just take you to Gringotts on my own, Hermione sighed. No need. Carlisle gestured to Mr. Weasley, who was picking his way through the crowd toward the giant marble building. We followed him. Heads up, Gringotts has goblins. They own the place, I told Edward and Alice. I knew the others could hear me. So be nice to them, Emmett. What would I do? He asked, offended. You would offend them. Goblins are fierce creatures when they want to be. We'll go in. Carlisle will take the money to get changed into wizard money galleons, sickles, and nuts while the rest of us go to our vaults. I want to see the vaults. Alice cried. I rolled my eyes at her theatrix, but the other vampires nodded in agreement. It's fine, Bella. Dad'll help Carlisle with the money, and we can take the rest of them down to our vaults, Ginny said. We walked up the marble stairs, through the double doors, and into the main hall of Gringotts. Whoa, the Cullens breathed. That's what I said when I first saw it, Harry said from behind us. Carlisle and Mr. Weasley headed to a desk in the corner, while the rest of us went straight to the biggest desk at the head of the room. A goblin sat there, black eyes gleaming as we approached. Remus spoke first. We're here to get some money from our vaults. Which ones? Potter, Weasley, Granger, Lupin, and Black. Keys, Mrs. Weasley, Harry, Hermione, and Remus held up the keys. The G. Oblin pointed to the vampires in our group. And them, they're with us, I told the goblin. He narrowed his giant black eyes at me, then nodded and called another goblin. Griphook. The other goblins scurried over. Take them to the Potter, Granger, Weasley, Lupin, and Black vaults. Griphook nodded. Follow me, please. Blank, _ blank. We followed him down a staircase to what looked like railroad tracks. A cart sat there waiting. Griphook got in first, then the Weasleys, Harry, Remus and Hermione. As each person sat down, the cart grew bigger so everyone could fit. Sirius waited until the Cullens and I were seated to take his seat in the cart. As soon as he did, Griphook started the cart and we sped down the tunnel, deep into the depths of Gringotts. Vault 125. Griphook said as the cart slowed to a stop in front of Hermione's vault. Her parents had opened a vault here before second year, that way she didn't have to keep exchanging money. Hermione hopped out and handed Griphook the key. He turned the key and the door swung open to reveal a few little piles of galleons, nuts, and a couple sickles. Whoa, the Cullens breathed. Which is which? Jasper asked me. Gold ones are galleons, silver are sickles, and bronze are nuts. 17 sickles to a galleon and 29 nuts to a sickle, Sirius answered for me as Hermione and Griphook climbed back in. The cart started again, and we sped down a level. Vault 592, Griphook said. Mrs. Weasley stepped out with Griphook and handed him her vault key. He opened the door for her and she swept a few handfuls into the bag. With Fred and George's business, the money in the vault had grown so the Weasleys now had a sizable amount. I laughed quietly. What? Harry asked as he turned to me. Oh, now that the joke shop's going great. Malfoy can't taunt Ron about having no money, I said. He sounds terrible, Emmett said, making fun of people for not having much money. He is, Harry and I agreed softly as Mrs. Weasley joined us. We visited Harry's vault next, then Remus's. Next stop, Black Vault, Griphook announced. Alice gasped. I turned and saw her eyes glazed over. Wow, Sirius, I didn't know you were that rich. Sirius chuckled sourly. There are a few things in there I like. And it's Bella's vault, too. Alice turned to me. And I thought we were rich. What do you mean waterfall? Rosalie gasped as we sped under falling water. I ducked my head. It lasted for a second, but almost everyone was spluttering, getting the water out of their mouths. Sirius and I were the only ones who were not surprised. This happened every time I came down here. Sirius and I just waved our wands and everyone was dry again. What was that? Hermione called back to us. Griphook stopped the cart. Everyone got out this time. The thief's downfall washes away all enchantments. That way, nobody can come down here and steal things, Sirius said offhandedly, answering Hermione's question. Griphook placed the palm of his hand on the center of the large black door. It melted at his touch. Sirius, the Weasleys, the Cullens, and Remus entered ahead of me. Harry followed behind. Griphook stayed, to make sure the door didn't close while he was outside, trapping us in here. I heard everyone's gasps. It really was amazing, even though the banners and cups scattered around the room bore the FAMI. Lee crest, a shield with a star in either upper corner, an upside-down V, then a sword pointing up underneath it, with a lion on either side and the motto underneath. The two large paintings in the corner made up for it. There was a painting of Salazar Slytherin and my ancestor, Maria Black. A large painting of Slytherin's pet snake, a large dark green python named Forchelang. Hey, Sirius, I called, admiring the painting yet again. Have you ever been able to find out what Forchelang means? Nope, he replied, coming up behind me. Why, just curious, I answered, picking up an intricate, light green bracelet from a table nearby. Two snakes, one on each side, with emeralds for eyes and a large diamond in between their mouths. One tail ended in little chains, the other in a clasp. Can I take this now? I asked Sirius. He laughed. Bella, this is your vault, too. Take what you want, except the pictures. I slipped the bracelet into my jacket pocket carefully. Right, those have to stay here. Why? Remus asked. Sirius shrugged, facing his old friend. Nobody's been able to get them off. Okay, well, Griphook's getting impatient. We should leave soon. I walked to the piles of coins in the corner. Scooped a few handfuls and put them in my bag. Sirius did the same, but he took a few more coins than me. Alright, everyone, let's get out of here, Sirius called. Everyone started filing out. Edward waited for me near the door. I saw a trunk partially open. Alice, probably. I walked over to close it, and found a velvet box under the hooked feet supporting the trunk. I scooted it out and gasped softly. Bella, Edward called. I stood up, grabbed his hand, and pulled him with me into the cart. Griphook scowled and started the cart. What's wrong? Edward asked me softly. In response, I held up the box. On the lid was the Hogwarts crest. Bella, what took you so long in the vault? Ginny asked as we left Gringotts. I'll tell you guys later, I muttered. I cast an undetectable extension charm on my pocket and slid the box from the vault inside. Okay, how do we want to split up? Mr. Weasley asked. I call Bella's group. Alice cried. People turned to look at us. I blushed. Alice, calm down. Ron, Harry, Bella, Hermione, Alice, you're one group. Jasper, Ginny, Emmett, Rosalie, Edward, you're with me. Arthur, if you could show Carlisle and Esme around, that'd be great. Remus, you and Sirius can do whatever, as long as you behave. Mrs. Weasley glared at Sirius as she spoke. Molly, I'm not 17 anymore, Sirius said, amused. She blushed. Right, sorry. Are the groups okay with everyone? Mr. Weasley asked. We nodded. Alice kissed Jasper lightly. I hugged Edward. He kissed the top of my head. I'll see you soon, all right? I whispered. Alice was already there, trying to drag us apart. He nodded, growling softly at his sister. Come on, Bella, Alice chirped, dragging me toward Ron, Hermione, and Harry. We meet at Fred and George's shop at 4. If you're not there by 5, we are leaving without you. We all took Mrs. Weasley's threat seriously. That still gives us almost 5 hours. Alice squealed as soon as we were off. Can we get something to eat first? I was on the verge of begging. I knew how Alice got on shopping trips. She nodded. Blank, underscore, blank. We walked into the nearest food shop we found and Harry, Hermione. Ron and I each bought a sandwich, a piece of cake, and bubbly water. It reminded me of Sprite. Bella, what does the black motto mean? Hermione asked. Toujours pure, always pure. Why? Alice asked. The Blacks are one of the last pureblood families out there. No Muggle parentage, whatsoever. It's stupid. All magical families are related somehow, Ron snorted after inhaling his sandwich. If we didn't marry Muggles, we would have died out a long time ago, I added. So they are marrying their cousins? Alice asked, disgusted. Second or third, but cousin nonetheless. Blank, underscore, blank. After we finished eating, Alice swiped our plates and threw them in the garbage before dragging us out the door. Where to first? Harry asked. I looked around. Quill and parchment shop, I said. We walked into the shop, and Alice oohed and awed over the many different types of quills and inks. Quick quotes quills, multicolor ink, quills with bird feathers on the end, regular ink, invisible ink. The parchment was just bundled into rolls of various sizes. I picked out a falcon-feathered quill and a hawk-feathered quill, along with a couple bottles of ink. And a medium and large roll of parchment. Alice, I said softly, even though she was halfway across the store. She turned. Pick out your quill, some parchment and some ink. She walked over to me. Really? Well, unless you just want to listen to some teachers drone on and on, or, if you're sitting with a class that's taking a test, I could go on, but I think you get the point. Alice smiled and picked out a hawk-feathered quill. Then grabbed a bottle of multicolor ink. That ink changes colors every hour, a different combination when it runs out of normal colors. Like, it could mix blue and silver, or gold and black. I explained. Cool. She snatched a small roll of parchment from a shelf, then skipped over to the counter, ready to pay for her things. Harry and Ron were waiting by the door, ready to go. I followed Alice and paid for my items. Hermione, let's go, Harry called. She waved him off, debating between two quills. She picked one up, put the one in her hand down, and paid the wizard. Finally, Harry cried. Took you long enough. Shut up, Harry. She took about a minute longer than we did, I said. Blank, underscore, blank. We went to Flourish and Blots to pick up our books. Alice browsed the creatures section. Bella, Ron called. I looked up from flipping through the standard book of spells, grade 7. Ron was holding a thick leather book in his hands, looking at something on a page. Yeah, Ron. I peeked around him to see what he was reading. My mouth fell open in shock. There, on the very first page, was the painting that hung in Carlisle's office that I saw when I first officially met the Cullens. Who are the Volturi? He asked, reading the caption. Carlisle will explain it in class, Alice told us, standing right behind us. Ron jumped. Alice. She laughed softly. Sorry. Get your books, and let's go. She yanked the book from Ron's hands and put it in a few other books, all of them very thick, on the counter. Hermione and Harry met up with us near the divination books. I still don't see why you take the stupid subject, you two. You should have done what I did. It's our last year at Hogwarts. Ron smirked, picking two books and handing one to Harry. Besides, what if Alice sits in that class one day, and embarrasses the old fraud? He laughed. Well, then, Alice would tell us all about it. And if she didn't I could always ask Edward. Hermione laughed. Come on. Blank, underscore, blank. After we paid for our books, we all got new school robes, as well as our dress robes, from Madame Malkin's. Ron D. I didn't need some lucky because he had a whole wardrobe full at home. Fred and George had given them to him the summer before 5th year, on Harry's orders. Alice helped Madame Malkin by picking Hermione's and my ball dresses out. Why do they call them dress robes, when they are just plain old dresses? I asked Hermione. She shrugged. Maybe because they don't want the girls to get really low-cut dresses. Bella. Alice squealed. It's perfect. In her hands was a gorgeous forest green dress. It was an off-shoulder versus cut, the 3/4 length sleeves were transparent, and when she held it up to me, it fell just below mid-calf. It came with an emerald green necklace, and would go perfectly with my new bracelet. Whoa, I said. It was amazing. I know. Alice handed me the dress reverently, then ordered me to try it on. It fit beautifully. Hermione. Ron gasped. You look. Ron was speechless. I turned my head and saw why. While I had been trying on my dress, Hermione had picked out a gown. She wore a knee-length, V-cut, halter-top ice blue dress that sparkled when she moved. Carlisle and Esme will be here soon. Don't think about these dresses when we meet up with the others, I want it to be a surprise. Alice told us. Quick, go change. Hey, Carlisle, Arthur. Hi, Esme, Alice said as Hermione and I changed back into our regular outfits. Hi, Alice, where's Bella? Esme asked. Back there with Hermione, getting changed. They found the perfect dresses. Don't you mean you found them for us? I snickered. I could almost see Alice rolling her eyes at me. You know what I mean. Anyway, Carlisle, Ron found a really interesting book. You'll probably want it for your class. I stepped out of the changing room as Alice handed Carlisle the leather book Ron had found. Carlisle chuckled when he read the title. Vampires Throughout History. Nice. Hi, Bella, Alice said without turning around. Harry got his dress robes, he's just getting fitted now. Then we'll be ready to go. Esme, you want to see my dress? She followed me back and I held up the dress for her to admire. Your daughter is a genius. Thank you, Bella. Alice breezed into the room. Esme, you'll need some robes and a dress, too. Quote, Alice dragged Esme to pick out her dress. Oi, ladies, we have exactly 3 hours to get the rest of our school supplies and book it across Diagon Alley to Fred and George's shop. Ron hollered. Coming, we shouted. Hermione and I carried the dresses and our school robes to the register. We paid for our stuff, then I talked to Carlisle while we waited for Alice and Esme. Find any good books, besides the one Alice gave you? Yes, I found some interesting werewolf and shapeshifter books, as well as Hogwarts, a history. Yes, Hermione knows that book almost inside and out. Do not, Hermione protested. Ron put his arm around her shoulder. Hush up, Bella, I pouted. You're no fun. Blank, blank. We finished our shop, with 10 minutes left to get over the twins' shop. Harry, Hermione, Ron, Ginny called, waving frantically once she caught sight of us. What am I, chopped liver? Bella, Emmett hollered. I grinned, so maybe I wasn't forgotten. Hello, love. Cold arms snaked around my waist. I leaned back. Hello, Edward. Did you have fun? Very much. It was hard to believe there were actually witches and wizards, but we're getting used to it. Emmett's very excited to see the joke shop. Everyone is, Rosalie said, coming up alongside me. Emmett bounded up to my other side. Together, the two of them agged me to the doors of the twins' joke shop, Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes. Serious Pav. Bella, you promised you'd tell us. Alice Cullen reminded Bella for the 10th time since we got back to the burrow. Wait until Harry and Ron get down here, she said. Bella, a promise is a promise, so start talking. Emmett said with raised eyebrows. My niece turned to me with pleading eyes. I shook my head. She's scared, Jasper noted. Of course she's scared to tell you guys. She wonders how you'll all react, Hermione groaned from her bed. We were in Percy's old room. Bella, just start without the guys. We haven't heard about your first 2 years, either. I pointed to Remus and myself. Why not? Bella blushed deeply. That's 'cause I know you'll overreact. We won't overreact. Edward will overreact. Rosalie rolled her eyes. Edward's head snapped around to face her. With perfectly good reason. Edward, she is not some china doll that can just sit on. Actually, he does have a reason to be worried. What with Fluffy in first year, the basilisk in second, Hermione smirked as Bella turned to her friend. Remus and I were as still as the vampires. Fluffy, Remus asked. A basilisk, I hissed. What's a basilisk? Esme asked, worried. A giant snake that kills you if you so much as meet its eyes for a second and has poisonous fangs. It's capable of living for a long time, and it is huge, 50 feet long and 30 feet tall, fully grown. I turned to Remus and saw that he was almost as pale as the Cullens. Harry fought it, not me, Bella muttered. You and Harry weren't hurt, were you? Carlisle asked. Of course Harry was. Bella just got knocked unconscious for a while, Hermione supplied. Traitor, Bella hissed. Alice, can I have my wand back now? She added, glancing at the wand in Alice's pocket. She had taken it when Bella pulled it out to stop Alice from asking her about her school years. No, Alice, all of us, really were upset at this. You will only get it back once you have told us about your first 2 years, Remus said. Reasonable. Always the peacemaker. Alice nodded willingly, and Bella just sighed. She got up and stuck her head out the door to shout up the stairs. Harry, Ron, get your lazy butts down here. Remus and the Cullens winced. If you are not down here in 10 seconds, I'll have Emmett fetch you. And you would not want that. A door slammed, and soon footsteps were running toward Percy's old room. Bella, love, try to remember most of us have sensitive hearing, Edward sighed, rubbing his ear. Sorry. Bella sat down in a huff on the bed again. Edward wrapped his arms around her. 3, 2, Alice counted down, and just as she reached 1, Harry flew into the room. Ron was right on his tail, and Emmett had to grab the back of his shirt to stop Ron from knocking into Harry. Sorry, Bella, we were packing, Ron told her. Why, we don't leave for almost 2 weeks, Bella said. He doesn't want to face everyone's wrath when they learn the boys accidentally. Ron cut Hermione off hurriedly. Can we just get started? I don't want to die yet. Edward's face turned stone cold. Bella put her hand against his cheek and shook her head slightly when he met her eyes. His eyes were almost black, so he must have been extremely ticked. Blank, underscore, blank. Bella Pav. Ron and Harry will never know how close they just came to having Edward kill them. Locking Hermione and I in the bathroom with the troll was not the smartest move on their part, but at least I had my wits about me. Then again, how much harm can one first year do to a troll? Shall we get started? Carlisle asked. Sirius and Remus conjured chairs to sit in. Why they didn't do that sooner, though, was anyone's guess. Ron sat next to Hermione and Harry sank down against the wall. I looked at my mortal friends. Train ride. Ron and Hermione shook their heads. Backgrounds. Harry closed his eyes and pursed his lips. He never talked about his life with the Dursleys, I mean. Who would? And the only things we knew were that his aunt, uncle, and cousin had a strange aversion to magic. I already told them you were a Muggle born. Ron's a pureblood, and Harry and I are both half-bloods. Renee is a squib magical family, no magic herself, and Charlie is a Muggle. Lily was a Muggle born, James was a pureblood. But his family wasn't like most other pureblood families, who thought they were better than everyone else. In fact, they were like the Weasleys, Remus cut in. Alice got up and opened the door. Ginny stood right outside, hand raised to knock. She blushed and muttered a greeting before sitting next to Harry. What are you doing? Telling them about our time at Hogwarts, Ron said. Now scram. She can listen if she wants to, Esme objected. Ron opened his mouth to argue, but she gave him her best don't argue with me look. How do you do that? Harry asked, amazed. Ginny laughed. Years and years of practice, Emmett, Esme, and Jasper said together. I shook my head. How did you guys find out you were wizards? Carlisle asked. Hermione giggled. Harry just shook his head while Ron rolled his eyes. I figured out IW. As different when this girl who was picking on me one day turned completely green and orange. Alice shivered. It must have looked terrible. Hermione nodded, laughing again. I was reaching for a model of a broomstick Charlie got me for Christmas one day and it just floated down to me. No one was in the room with me, or in the hallway. Ron shrugged. Ginny set Fred's toy broom on fire when he stole her doll and hid them. I turned to my friend, who was blushing but said, he shouldn't have messed with my doll. Edward whispered in my ear, it was a Harry Potter doll. I snorted. Explains a lot, I replied. Emmett laughed. Ginny scowled at us. How'd Bella find out? Alice asked. I smirked vindictively. Remus decided to pull a Halloween prank on me when I was 5. Sirius clapped Remus on the shoulder. But Remus shook his head. You threw me in a cage, Bella. Not my fault you decided to jump out dressed like the Grim Reaper with a scythe in your hand, Remus, I retorted. I walked downstairs, excited that Uncle Remus was here to take me trick-or-treating. He visited once in a while, but he never stayed long. This was the first time he had ever stayed for Halloween. My fairy wings fluttered behind me, and my short green dress swirled around my knees. Uncle Remus, I called, are you ready to go? I walked into the living room. It was dark, except for a few candles lit in various places around the room. Uncle Remus wasn't there. Uncle Remus, where are you? I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find him. Just as I was about to leave, something moved out of the corner of my eye. I turned around, and a man in a big black cloak with a long metal thing appeared out of nowhere. I screamed and light filled the room. Not golden light, not ice blue light, but a strange purple light. I squeezed my eyes shut. When the light faded, my mom was in the room and the man had been thrown to the floor on the other side of the room, encased in a prison of ice. The metal thing was where the man was standing earlier. Mom just looked at me with a face like a fish. The man in the ice cage spoke. Renee, she has some powerful magic. He pulled his face off. Wait, it was just a mask. Uncle Remus, I screeched. What did you do that for? He grinned at me sheepishly. Happy Halloween. A piece of ice broke off and hit him on the head. Man, I wish I could have seen your face. Ron wheezed through his laughter. Wow, Bella, you had powerful magic, even as a kid, Sirius said, impressed. Remus scowled. Okay, Harry's turn. Harry shrugged, a smile on the corners of his mouth. I turned my teacher's wig blue. Got up on the roof of school somehow. Flew, Sirius, Remus, and I said at once. Apparated, Ron, Hermione, and Ginny argued. Did it feel like you were being squeezed through a tube? Remus asked. Harry shook his head. Ha, he flew, I said proudly. How do you know how to apparate? I didn't think you had your license yet. Hermione asked. The rules are different in the States. You can get your apparating license at 16, I told her. And I set a python on my cousin Dudley, Harry continued as if he had never been interrupted. Ron and I cackled with mirth, even though we'd heard it before. Ron, because he had seen said cousin before, me, because it was just funny. Really? Emmett laughed. Esme scowled. He wasn't hurt, was he? Harry and Ron rolled their eyes. Esme, if you knew the Dursleys, you wouldn't be caring either way. Yes, she would, the Cullens disagreed. They turned to me, wondering whose side I was on. If they were bad enough, I'm sure she wouldn't care. But Esme is a very compassionate person. So, I dunno. They don't like magic, Harry told her. Ron was going to say something, but I cut across him. Tell them about when Hagrid came to get you, Harry. Okay, when I got my first letter, I tried to open it at the kitchen table. My cousin saw, and my Uncle Vernon took it from me. He sent me and Dudley out, and he and Aunt Petunia flipped. They burned it, but the letters kept appearing everywhere, even in the eggs, once he boarded up enough places in the house. He went mad. I thought he was already mad. Sirius asked, scowling at the mention of the Dursleys. He went madder, then. Anyway, one Sunday, about 100 letters came through the fireplace. I tried to catch one, but my uncle took it away before I could read it. Why didn't you just pick one up off the floor? Jasper asked as if it was the most obvious thing in the world, which it kinda was. I was 11, plus, I didn't think of it. Anyway, we eventually wound up in a hut on a rock. At midnight, Hagrid busted down the door and told me that I was a wizard. Turns out my uncle and aunt lied to me all those years, saying my parents died in a car crash. Petunia hated my mum, they were sisters, and she went on a huge rant about how their parents were so proud that mum was a witch. Hagrid told me the true story, and we went to Diagon Alley the next day. I already knew what I was. So it didn't come as a shock to me, Ron said. Ginny nodded in agreement. Professor McGonagall came to my house and explained everything to me. My parents and I were thrilled, Hermione threw in. I smirked. Remus actually gave me my letter. Remus snickered. You jumped up and down, squealing. I thought I was going to go deaf. Edward chuckled, probably seeing the scene through Remus's eyes. The image of Alice that day, I take it. Emmett gasped. Not another Alice, he cried, pretending to shield his muscular frame behind Esme. She rolled her eyes. Emmett, be nice. Yes, Mom. Ginny and Ron snorted. Emmett's head flew up to face them. What? He demanded. They shook their heads. No wonder you got along so well with the twins. After Bella got her letter, she insisted on being taken straight to Hogwarts, Remus continued. I smiled as I remembered that day. I was eating breakfast with Reenie when a blue light came from next to the sink. I perked up, because Remus's owl had arrived last night, telling us he would be coming today, and that he would be taking me to England. I thought he would just be taking me on my annual vacation. But no, the glow faded and Remus stood there, looking a little more tired, and his robes were a bit shabbier than I remembered. But he still smiled as I raced toward him and hugged him tightly. Bella, happy birthday. He pulled a letter from his robes and handed it to me. My eyes widened when I read it. Bella Swan, Kitchen, 2215 Sunshine Avenue, Phoenix, Arizona, USA. I turned it over and saw the Hogwarts crest. A lion, badger, eagle, and serpent surrounding a large H. Remus, I breathed, as this. Open it, he encouraged. I tore into it and pulled out the parchment. Dear Ms. Swan, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Remus Lupin will pick you up from your house and take you to his house, where you will stay until September 1st if you wish to attend. Below is a list of equipment you will need for the coming year. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. I squealed and jumped around for a good 5 minutes, unable to believe it. I always thought I would have to go to a school here in America, and Remus had told me about the castle and Honeydukes which I wouldn't be able to go to until 3rd year and a lot of other things. Remus, I can't believe it. I really get to go to Hogwarts? I asked after a bit. He nodded. Well, let's go. Whoa, Bella, first, you have to pack your stuff. Then we have to go to Diagon Alley and get your supplies. After that, we have to wait until September 1st, he laughed. Actually, that was the first time in 10 years that I saw Harry, Remus said. Harry's head shot up. Really? Why didn't I see you? I shrugged, then shivered. The crowd. Harry groaned at the reminder. The others laughed, knowing Harry's and my aversion to fame. Thank goodness Harry was more recognizable than me. When we finally got to the Leaky Cauldron 3 hours later, we had to pick our way through a crowd of people, all of whom were gathered around a giant of a man. I guess this was the gamekeeper Hagrid Remus told me about. I looked through the crowd a bit and saw they were actually shaking hands with a boy who didn't look any older than me. He was extremely thin, wearing clothes that were too big for him and glasses held together by tape, and had messy black hair that looked like it never lied flat, no matter what you did to it. I opened my mouth to speak, but Remus tugged on my hand and pulled me along. On the outskirts of the crowd. We made it out the back without being seen. What was that about? I asked once the door swung shut. Harry Potter is getting his school supplies today, too, he answered. I raised an eyebrow. Remus had told me of how Harry and I survived the killing curse when we were babies, and somehow got rid of Voldemort at the same time but was not able to say any more because Remus pulled out his wand and tapped a brick. The wall shifted until it became a doorway. My eyes were about to fall out of my head. Wow, Remus nodded. Yeah, that was my first reaction too. Come on, we have to get to the bank first. I followed at a slow walk, taking in every single shop I could see and making sure I didn't trip over anything. Then we reached the bank, got the money, and went school shopping. I said, smiling. Nothing strange happened, except when we got my wand. And Lily. Hello, I called, walking into the shop. It felt like there was an unknown power in here. It was strange, but not in a bad way. Mr. Ollivander, Remus called behind me. A man with white hair and creepy eyes stepped out from the rows of boxes and came over to us. Ah, Mr. Lupin, how are you today? Very well, Mr. Ollivander. Just here to get Bella her wand. Remus put his hand on my shoulder. Your wand still works well, though. Elm wood, with a wolf hair, 9 inches. Yes, it still works wonderfully. Mr. Ollivander walked to the back of the shop and I took the opportunity to whisper, how does he remember that? Remus shrugged. It's a gift. Mr. Ollivander came back with a few boxes. He put 2 on the counter and took the 3rd one out of its box, handing it to me. 9 3/4 inches, birchwood and unicorn hair. I looked at the wand, then waved it like I saw Remus do occasionally. A jet of light hit Mr. Ollivander's sleeve, which promptly caught fire. He extinguished it with a wave of his wand and grabbed the one I was holding from me. He handed me the 2nd one. Walnut and phoenix feather, 9 inches. I continued flicking wands until I held one that Mr. Ollivander said was ash wood, with phoenix feather and dragon heartstring core. An extremely unusual combination, and warmth spread through my fingers. This is very strange, Mr. Ollivander whispered. What's strange? Remus asked. He looked up at both of us. I remember every single wand I've ever sold. This wand is extremely strange, since it has both a phoenix feather and dragon heartstring core. The phoenix who gave the feather for your wand gave only 2 other feathers. One of which I sold almost 50 years ago. The dragon heartstring, on the other hand, has only one sister wand. Usually, there are several brother wands. I've never seen anything like it before. Quote, so is it still a good wand for me to use? Mr. Ollivander looked appalled that I even thought of such a question. Of course, the wand chose you. It's just that if you try to fight the owner of any of the other 3 wands, they will not work properly against each other. I blushed and nodded, still confused. We paid for my wand and left the store. So who has the other wands? Rosalie asked. Do you really expect me to tell you before I found out on my own? I stifled a laugh as they all groaned. The only ones who knew were Sirius, Remus, Harry, Hermione, Ron, and me. Then again, Edward Proba. Bly already picked it out of their brains. And Alice could have seen it. What happened when you got Lily? Ginny asked, even though I already told her and Hermione this story. Remus opened the door to Elope's Owl Emporium, ushering me inside. I froze when I set foot inside. Whoa, standing in front of me was the giant man from earlier. But he looked even bigger up close. His hair and beard were tangled, and his black eyes glittered like beetles. He smiled when he saw Remus behind me. Remus, he boomed. I haven't seen you in ages. Sorry, Hagrid, I've been busy keeping an eye on this one. Remus patted my shoulder. I blushed as Hagrid turned his gaze to me. We won, have Terby puttin' up with any more OYA troublemakers, will we? Hagrid asked, raising his bushy eyebrows at Remus. He laughed, shaking his head. No, Hagrid, Bella here is not a troublemaker. In fact, she's rather quite shy. I blushed even deeper. Remus. The two of them laughed. I shook my head. I besses be off. I gotta take Harry back to his aunt and uncle's house. Hagrid's eyes seemed to narrow when he mentioned them. Why? I didn't know. Remus looked sad, probably because he couldn't say hi to his old friend's son. I noticed Hagrid had a bag in one hand, an owl cage in another. Inside was a beautiful snowy owl, its head resting under its wing. That owl's beautiful, I said. Is it yours? Nah, she's Harry's. His birthday present, actually. Quote, I'm sure he'll love her, Remus whispered. The owl glanced at us from over her wing for a second with beautiful amber eyes, then put it back under. Hagrid seemed to glow with pride. Yay think. Definitely, we assured him. He smiled and left the shop. See ye in September, Bella. Bye, Hagrid. Once the door swung shut, an auburn owl that didn't look elder than 7 months fluttered down from the rafters and landed on my shoulder. I started. Remus laughed sadly. Our owls did that when we were 11, he said quietly. Who? I asked. He looked down at me, pain was evident in his eyes. James, Sirius, Lily, and I. We walked in here at different times, but each owl flew over to us and refused to leave our shoulders until we bought them. He closed his eyes. They were all from the same clutch. Sirius and I got the male owls, Lily and James got the girls. Really? I asked, sorry that I brought it up. He nodded. What were their names? Lily named hers Arwen. James named his Black Rose. He shortened it to Rose occasionally. Sirius chose the name Orion, and mine was Romulus. I finished for him, remembering fondly the black barn owl who died a few years back. I stroked the owl's beak. She had auburn feathers, and bright green eyes. I think I'll call you Lily. That's sweet, Ginny and Alice said. Sad, though, Rosalie added. So what happened after that? Emmett asked, trying to distract the three of us who knew and loved the old owls from thinking about them too much. We just stayed in the leaky cauldron until it was time for Bella to go to school. Remus shrugged, then Moth glared at me. Bella over there opened her textbooks about a total of once. Sirius, Harry, and Emmett gave me the thumbs up behind his back. RMI1 and Carlisle looked at me with disappointment. I shrugged, blushing slightly. So what? A couple of them were interesting, but several of them hurt my brain. But, you got good marks, I hope? Esme asked sternly. Oh, of course I did, just not in potions, I told her, whispering the last part. Sirius growled. Of course not. He knew you're my niece, even before he overheard us in the shack. And we hate each other. It's not just me and Harry, I told him, heading him off before he could get a nice long rant about slimy Slytherin potions teachers taking school grudges out on people's children. He hates every house except his own. Surely he's not that bad, Jasper said optimistically. Everyone who knew the man turned to him with faces of disbelief, even though Hermione was sort of reluctant. He's the worst teacher in history. Actually, Binns and Trelawney have to be the worst teachers in history, Ron corrected Harry. Harry thought it over, then nodded. You have a point, okay. Snape is the meanest teacher in history. Let's put it this way, the first time we had his class, he asked Harry these ridiculous questions that didn't come up until at least the back of the book. I shook my head. And when Harry and Malfoy get into a fight, he takes points off of Gryffindor and not Slytherin, Ginny threw in. That's terrible, Esme exclaimed. We all nodded seriously. Wait till you meet him in person. Ron muttered. But he's with the Order, Hermione objected half-heartedly. Leopards don't change their spots, Sirius reminded her. Enough about Snape. So what happened when you got on the train? Ginny asked. Oh, well, an older student helped me up onto the train while Remus grabbed my trunk and lifted it inside for me. Bye, Remus. See you at Christmas. I see a LED over my shoulder as I carried Lily's cage. The Hufflepuff was nice enough to offer to take my trunk to a compartment. Thanks, I said as he lifted it onto the luggage racks. I put Lily's cage next to my trunk and unfastened it so she could get out when she wanted. She hooted gratefully. No problem. Was that your dad out there? He asked. I shook my head. Uncle, my dad lives in America. He doesn't even know I'm a witch. Really? I would have thought. My parents are divorced. They split shortly after we came to America. We stood in awkward silence on his part, until I said, "You never told me your name." He looked relieved that we could talk about something else entirely. Cedric Diggory. He held out a hand. I shook it. I'm Bella Swan. His eyes widened a bit and he chuckled nervously. You realize you and Harry Potter are celebrities in our world, right? I sighed. Yeah, Uncle Remus told me, but really, what's there to be famous for? So we got rid of some creep who was killing everyone off and we can't even remember it. It's not that great, being famous for something you can't remember doing, you know. He nodded. At least you were told about this ahead of time. I wonder what Harry thinks of all this. The compartment door slid open. Cedric turned his head toward the newcomer. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize anybody else was in here, a young boy muttered. I caught a glimpse of messy black hair. Oh, no, that's all right. I was just leaving. Cedric helped him put his trunk next to mine. He smiled slightly and waved at me. Nice to meet you, Bella. Hope I'll see you around. Bye, Cedric. I hope so, too. I got a good look at the boy now. He was the same boy I saw in the leaky cauldron. Hello, Harry. He looked slightly startled that I knew his name, then he flattened his bangs over his scar. Hello, he sighed, sitting down by the window in a heap. I suppose you want to stare at my forehead, too. I looked at him sympathetically and took the seat across from him. Actually, I was wondering if you just hated the attention as much as I do. I may not have a scar on my forehead, but I still hate the fact that everyone seems to know me as soon as I say my name. It was quiet for a few minutes, until someone opened the door again. It was a tall redhead with freckles, who looked curiously inside. Can I sit with you too? Everywhere else is full. Harry nodded. Sure. The boy sat down next to him and two identical boys with hair as red as his peeked in. Hey Ron, we're going to find Lee Jordan, he's got a tarantula. The boy named Ron nodded distractedly. I didn't think he even heard. The twins shrugged. Nice seeing you again, Harry. They left. Ron was quiet for a while, until the train started moving, then asked, Are you really Harry Potter? Harry nodded warily. I thought it might be another one of Fred and George's tricks. He turned to me. I'm Ron Weasley. I smiled slightly. Remus had told me about the blood traitor family. I'm Bella Swan. His eyes widened. Really? Yeah. Do you guys really have? He trailed off, looking away. Harry pulled his hair back and I lifted up the hem of my shirt so the two of them could see the mark on my hip. We became friends with Ron pretty fast, and Harry learned how I was famous. Harry and I even bought us all candy when the trolley came by. Bertie Bott's every flavor: beans, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, and a lot of other stuff. The door slid open and a boy with sleek platinum blonde hair came in, followed by two bulky bodyguards. There was no other word for them. I hear, Harry Potter and Isabella Swan were in this compartment, the blonde drawled. He looked almost exactly like how Remus described a Malfoy. You too, I take it. Harry seemed to instantly dislike the boy, which was good. After hearing so many bad stories about the boy's family. What do you want, Malfoy? I asked. He looked pleased. So you know of my family? Well, all I know is what my uncle told me. But I know that your family is pureblood, and rich, and infamous. My uncle never liked your father, and neither did Harry's dad. Harry's eyes widened. Your uncle knew my father? I nodded with a smile. It was kind of sad to see his eyes light up at the idea of learning something about his parents. They should have been alive to tell him stories and to watch him get on the train and do a lot of stuff. But thanks to Voldemort, none of that was possible. The boy flushed, but retorted, Potter, you don't want to be hanging with the wrong sort. He turned to Harry and held out his hand. Harry looked at it for a minute before replying, I think I can choose the wrong sort for myself, thank you. He glared at all of us before leaving. Crabbe, Goyle, come on. The bodyguards left. Thank God he's gone, Ron said. Who was quiet until that moment. Tell me about it. The door opened again and a bushy-haired girl asked bossily, Have any of you seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one. We shook our heads. She recognized Harry pretty quickly. You're Harry Potter. Then she turned toward me. And you're Bella Swan, right? We both nodded. She walked in and sat down next to me. I've read all about you too, of course. You're in. She listed a few books that we were mentioned in, and a couple more in which there were whole chapters dedicated to us. Then she went on to explain that she was really looking forward to the classes and wondering which house she'd be in and all the books she read before today. I was amazed. I was pretty sure even Remus didn't read this much before his first year. I'm Hermione Granger, she finished. She turned to Ron, who was dumbfounded. And you are? Once he finally got his voice back, he stuttered, Ron Weasley. Pleased to meet you. She rose. You three had better get changed. I expect we'll be arriving shortly. Ron and Harry stared after her as she left. She's mental. Ron was the first to speak. Who reads that many books? I glared at him. Just because you don't like to read, Ron, doesn't mean other people are the same. Now, if you two will excuse me. I stood and grabbed my robes. The owls had been really quiet until then. So it was a surprise to all of us when Lily screeched indignantly and gave Ron an owl's version of the evil eye. I smirked and left the boys to get changed. When we were done, Esme was looking at Ron disappointedly. Remus and Hermione were just staring at him, like an investigator would to break a suspect. Ginny slapped him on the head. What was that for? He asked, rubbing his head. She glared at him. Oh, come on, it was 6 years ago. We can hold grudges too, Ron, I said slowly. Rosalie smirked. I knew vampires could hold grudges longer than anyone. And you were the reason that we wound up stuck in the bathroom that Halloween, Hermione added. You notice how everything bad happens to you guys on that particular day? Ginny asked. It's cursed, serious, Ron, Harry and I said. Wouldn't doubt it, Remus muttered. So what happened after? Carlisle asked. I became friends with Hermione. At least one of you was nice that day, Esme muttered. Harry and Ron protested instantly. You know it's true, I sang. They shifted their eyes to me. Edward chuckled. You've been awfully quiet, Sirius noted. Nothing bad has happened yet. He kissed the top of my head. I leaned into his chest. Harry and Ron glared at me. I smiled sweetly back at them. Not my fault I was her only friend until Halloween. After we got off the train and went up to the school in the boats every other year goes by carriage. But we were first years we met Professor McGonagall, Hermione continued the story, hoping to keep everybody's mind on track. Hey, Hermione, I said as we were waiting for Professor McGonagall to speak. Harry and Ron were in front of us. She looked up and smiled a little. Hello, Bella. She looked up at the elder witch, who began to speak. We will go through these doors. She pointed to the big double doors behind her, and you will be sorted into your houses. There are 4 houses, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. While you're here, your house is going to be like your family. Your accomplishments will earn you points, while any rule breaking, here she looked at me, Ron, and Harry, will lose you points. Now, wait here while I get things ready. She walked off. I wonder how we'll be sorted, I heard Harry say. I was wondering about that, too, but Remus had smiled mysteriously when I asked him, so it shouldn't be anything too bad. Hermione started muttering spells under her breath. I looked at her. You don't need to do that, I whispered. How do you know? I shrugged. My uncle is a Hogwarts graduate, but he wasn't real concerned. He told me some stories about his first days here. Harry faced me. That reminds me, Bella, you said your uncle knew my dad. I nodded. Yeah, he tells me lots of stories. I can write to him and see if he'll send you one, I offered. His eyes sparkled and he nodded a few times before Professor McGonagall came back out. Follow me, please. The doors swung open, and we walked under the enchant ceiling and past the house tables where all the other students sat. I saw Cedric at the Hufflepuff table. He gave me a thumbs up, and I smiled back and waved a little. That's it? Hermione asked. I looked toward the front to see what she was looking at. A dusty old hat sat on a stool. It opened its mouth and mine fell open. The hat sang. All it really did was tell us about the 4 houses and how the founders chose the students they would teach. But it was weird watching a hat sing. Professor McGonagall stood next to the stool with a list. So all we have to do is try on the hat? Harry asked Ron, relieved. I laughed mentally. Good joke, Remus. Fred was going on about wrestling a troll, Ron scoffed. He was so gullible. Professor McGonagall started calling out names and the students came up to put the hat on, one by one. Some took longer than others. It took 5 minutes for the hat to decide where to place Hermione. I heard Ron mutter, "Whatever house she's in, I hope I'm not in it." Harry nodded feverishly. I smacked their shoulders lightly, but still hard enough to convey the message. They fell silent, but I still heard Ron groan when the hat hollered, "Gryffindor." On the other hand, the hat barely brushed Draco Malfoy's head before it shouted, "Slytherin." With a smirk, the boy strode over to the cheering Slytherins. I shivered. I really didn't want to be in that house. Most of them wound up joining Voldemort when he was still around. But so did people from other houses. "Harry Potter," Professor McGonagall finally called. The older students muttered amongst themselves. And Harry walked shakily to the stool. I smiled encouragingly before the hat covered his head. The hall was silent. Harry clutched the stool nervously a few times. It seemed like he was trying to convince the hat to put him in a different house than the one it considered. With a chill, I realized that the hat was considering putting him in Slytherin. Finally, the hat shouted, "Gryffindor." And Harry handed the hat back to Professor McGonagall, grinning. The uproar was instantaneous. Everyone at the Gryffindor table was cheering and those nearest to where he sat reached out to shake his hand. The Weasley twins were shouting, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Once the noise died down, some more students were sorted, and then it was my turn. As my name was called, there was more muttering. I drew in a shaky breath and sat down on the stool. The hat fell over my eyes, obscuring my view. "Hello," the hat said in my ear. Hi," I thought back. "This is strange. Dear, could you say something very quietly?" "Why," I whispered, "I can't seem to get a read on you. This is very strange, never have I seen this before." The hat pondered over this, then asked, "Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?" "Well, I like reading, but fiction, not my school books. I would do anything to protect my friends and family. I have one uncle, he's not really my uncle, but I see him as one Remus Lupin. My real uncle, Sirius Black. Ah, yes, I remember him. Threatened to run himself through with a sword if he was put with the rest of the Blacks. He and Remus Lupin, as well as their friends James Potter and Peter Pettigrew, became Gryffindors, and Remus, James, and Sirius brought some much-needed prankster mayhem to the school. Much like the Weasley twins. Now, I'll leave you with a word of warning: things are not always as they appear. Gryffindor. This last word was shouted out for the whole school to hear. The hat was removed, and the Gryffindor table was cheering again. I blushed and found a seat next to Hermione. Across from Harry. "Between the two of you, it took a good 15 minutes to sort you," Hermione said. "What did it say?" "It was strange. It told me that things are not always as they appear. It's words, not mine," I said. Harry stayed silent. Ron joined the Gryffindors shortly after, and soon the stool and heart were carried out of the hall. The headmaster stood up to speak. "Welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce you to Professor Quirrell, our new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher." A funny guy in a purple turban stood up. Harry rubbed his forehead and whispered, "Ouch," as my scar, which was cold on normal days, froze to the point of pain briefly on my hip. Images flashed before my eyes, something purple falling to the ground. A blood-red stone, a giant chess set, a three-headed dog, flying keys, bottles of liquid, some weird plant thing, a troll, and a mirror. It was very strange. "Bella," Hermione shook my shoulder. "You okay?" I blinked and looked at her. "Yeah, why?" "You zoned out there for a minute." Food appeared in front of us, and we began to pile some on our plates. What did Professor Dumbledore have to say? Warned us away from the Forbidden Forest, told us there's a list of stuff that's banned on Filch's door, he's the caretaker, she added after seeing my confused look, and third floor corridor is off limits unless you want to die. I shivered. Strange and creepy. Dumbledore dismissed us soon after the desserts disappeared, and we followed Percy Weasley, a pompous fifth-year prefect, to our common room. Hermione and I climbed up the stairs to the girls' dormitories and found our stuff. We fell asleep soon after. "You think the hat was telling you about Sirius being framed?" Ron asked, breaking the silence in the room. Most of the Cullens looked curious, probably wondering why I hadn't mentioned that before. I shrugged. "Ron, the hat could have been hinting at many things. But probably, or it was warning me that Quirrell was carrying Voldemort around in the back of his head. Maybe both." "Did the Sorting Hat really think about putting you in Slytherin?" Rosalie asked. Harry winced. "Really? That's stupid. Anyone who knows you belong in Gryffindor," Sirius snorted. A smile tugged at the corner of my lips. "Did you really threaten to run yourself through with a sword if you were in that house?" He looked at me directly, not hesitating in his answer. Yes, and you would have done it? Esme gasped. 3 words, pureblood, mania, family. Sirius shivered. Well, take comfort in the fact that your parents are dead, Remus said bracingly. Whatever happened to the painting of your mother, Sirius? Ginny asked. I smiled brightly. I burned it. Everyone turned to me. Harry and Ron looked immensely relieved. Sirius looked ready to cheer at any moment. Hermione, Ginny, and Remus laughed. The Cullens looked confused as to why I would do such a thing. Why would you do that, Bella? Alice asked, aghast. She yelled at us. It was completely frustrating, and a pain on the ears, Remus said. Mudbloods. Filth. Destroying my father's house. I shrieked in a mocking imitation of Mrs. Black. Sirius paled. Never again, he told me. I nodded. Dinner for the humans, Alice said, right before Mrs. Weasley called up the stairs. Blank, blank. So, where were we? Ron asked as soon as all of us got settled back in Percy's old room. He lounged on one bed with Hermione, and Harry and Ginny took the other one. Edward sat against the wall. And I sat in his lap. Remus waved his wand, and the beds and chairs turned into big fluffy cushions. The 4 occupying the beds gasped in shock and landed on the cushions. More appeared on the floor. Enough for all of us to lay down comfortably. Ha, I laughed. Okay, nothing much happened the first week, except it took the boys a whole 5 days to get to the Great Hall without getting lost. I pulled a tragic face. That's just sad. We were able to get there without getting lost after the 3rd day, Sirius sighed. Oh, well, I guess not all of us have my amazing memory. Hermione and I glanced at each other, then laughed. 2nd day, Sirius gaped. But I'm sure my map helped, Remus said with raised brows. Oh, yes, we never would have accomplished it without your fantastic mapping skills. Hermione stood up and mock bowed. But he's not much of an artist, Edward sighed thoughtfully. Remus blushed. Hush, not all of us can be good at everything, I told him. Anyway, the classes were great for the most part. Binns, the only ghost teacher, is so boring he could put a vampire to sleep. Impossible, the Cullens said. Well, if you could fall asleep, you would in his class. I swear, the only one able to resist his dullness is Hermione, Ron groaned. Well, if you had only tried harder, Hermione began. Here we go again, Harry breathed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to finish the recap of your first year sometime this century, Ginny said with pointedly, raising her eyebrows. Okay, so the bad part of the week was potions, Harry continued. The dungeon door slammed shut. Everyone fell silent. Professor Snape swept through the room and immediately began talking. Nobody seemed to breathe. There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class, he began. By the end of the year you will be able to brew fame, bottle, glory, and even put a stopper on death if you're not the same bunch of dunderheads I usually have to teach. Hermione was sitting next to me at the table across from Harry and Ron. She was on the edge of her seat, looking nervous. Hermione, you'll define. I've heard that he's mean to just about anyone. I reassured her under my breath. Professor Snape started to take roll. When he reached Harry's name, his lips curled maliciously. Mr. Potter, our new celebrity, he said slowly. He continued. D down the roll until he read out my name. I blushed slightly. Miss Swan. Well, 2 celebrities in the same year, the same class, even. He strode over to my desk. Tell me, Miss Swan, are you going to be like your incompetent uncle who got himself locked up in Azkaban? He, too, strutted about the school as if he owned it. In fact, he never seemed to open a textbook, but somehow, he was able to pass first year. He said low enough for only Hermione and I to hear. I clenched my hands into fists but refused to rise to the bait. Potter, where would I find a Beelzebub? He snapped. I looked over and saw Harry looking baffled. I don't know, sir. Swan, what's the answer? He glared at me. In the stomach of a goat, sir. I had to clench my teeth together to hold onto my temper. He smiled victoriously, and I realized that he knew what I was doing. He fired off questions one after the other between the two of us, until Harry told him that maybe he should ask Hermione, since she seemed to know the answers. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. Put your hand down, foolish girl, he snarled at Hermione. And a point from Gryffindor for your cheek, Potter. Hermione dropped her hand, tears brightening her eyes. Hermione, you're not foolish, I whispered as we went to get our potions ingredients. You're one of the smartest witches I know. You can't know that many witches, she sniffed. Well, no, I allowed. But you're smarter than my uncle, and I think he's read the entire Hogwarts library 5 times over. She blinked rapidly to dispel the tears. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Would you like me to write to him and double-check? She hurriedly said, oh, no, that's okay. I'll take your word for it. And after class, he docked another point because apparently, I purpose. Fully allowed Neville to blow up his potion, Harry said, rolling his eyes. Actually, I think the cauldron melted, Hermione said thoughtfully. Then the guys went to Hagrid's for tea after classes. And they found out Gringotts had been broken into, I continued. Which, in turn, got the two of us curious. I pointed to Harry and myself. Of course, Edward breathed. Flying practice was the thing that distracted us. Harry said after a minute. I laughed. Oh, yeah, do you remember everyone's faces? Sirius and Emmett leaned forward eagerly. What did you guys do? Well, we were at our first flying practice. Neville accidentally took off too soon, and sprained his wrist. Madam Hooch, the flying instructor, took him to the hospital wing and told us to stay off the brooms. Carlisle winced. Yeah, Madam Pomfrey mended it pretty quick, though. Malfoy found his remembral. What's the point of those, anyway? They don't tell you what you've forgotten, only that you've forgotten something. Hermione shook her head. After Malfoy got the remembral. Give it here, Malfoy, Harry said quietly. I glared at the smug boy. No, I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find. Malfoy CL. Embed on his broom and pushed off from the ground. How about on the roof? Harry swung his leg over the broom in his hands. Hermione touched his sleeve. Harry, what are you doing? You heard what Madam Hooch said. Besides, you don't know how to fly. Harry ignored her and kicked up off the ground. Hermione, if he's anything like his dad, Harry will be fine. I took off after Harry before she could stop me. Give it here, Malfoy. Or I'll knock you off your broom. Harry cried as I flew closer. Malfoy tossed the remembral. Harry sped toward the ground and caught the ball in his hands. He pulled Ed up out of the dive close to the ground. I saw Crabbe swing his broom as Harry flew near the other students. Harry, look out, I cried. Harry zoomed straight up and over my head, but he dropped the sphere. Reflexively, I snatched it from the air as Malfoy closed in and dropped it over Ron's head. He caught it neatly in the palm of his hand. Malfoy landed quickly. Harry Potter, Isabella Swan, somebody cried from behind us. I landed softly next to Harry as Professor McGonagall stormed toward us. Never have I seen something like that. You could have broken your neck. She rounded on me. You could have crashed into Mr. Malfoy, or dropped that on someone's head. She gestured to the remembral in Ron's hands. Follow me. She took the sphere from Ron, ignoring the students' protests. We followed her nervously. You don't think we're going to get expelled, do you? Harry asked me nervously. I shook my head. Doubtful. Dumbledore makes the final call on decisions like that. We follow. Professor McGonagall to Professor Quirrell's classroom. Wait here. We stayed still as statues while she asked if she could borrow someone or something named Wood. It's gotta be a student. Why else? Would she ask permission from another teacher if they weren't in his class? I said softly, to reassure myself. Harry nodded. A student. Yeah, sure enough, a fifth year stepped out of the classroom moments later. The four of us went into an empty classroom nearby. Professor McGonagall made sure the door was shut before telling the fifth year, Swan, Potter, this is Wood. Wood, I've found you a seeker and chaser. Oliver Wood's eyes widened. I understood everything now. He was captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. They needed a seeker and a chaser. That could be us. Are you sure? He asked hoarsely. Professor McGonagall held up the remembral. Potter caught this coming out of a 50-foot dive. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it. And he flew above Miss Swan and dropped it. She caught it before another student could. And handed it over to a Gryffindor student, the youngest Mr. Weasley. Harry sagged in relief against me. I stood stiffly, listening to the conversation flowing around me. By the end of it, the Gryffindor Quidditch team had 2 new members. And Harry and I became the youngest Quidditch players in a century. Sirius grinned. I knew you two were good, but making the team in first year. James and I didn't get on the team until second. Don't forget, there was a 7th-year chaser and beater on the team in first year, too, Remus said, hiding a laugh behind his hand. Sirius, the Weasleys. Harry and I could talk about Quidditch for hours. As soon as I found out, I had ridden him with every detail. Soon after we made the team, Bella and I each got our own brooms Nimbus 2000s. Malfoy saw them and, since I embarrassed him, challenged me to a duel. Harry picked up Midnight, in the trophy room. Sirius and Remus groaned. He didn't show, did he? Harry and Ron shook their heads. Hermione, I hissed as I saw the door open and my friend slipped out. I followed her. She sat in the chair by the fireplace and watched the boys' dormitory's staircase. Hermione, if they want to get in trouble, let them. It's none of our business what they do. I was lying. I was worried about what trouble they could get into, but it truthfully was none of my business. I don't want all those points taken from us because they are complete idiots. A door opened, and Harry and Ron came downstairs. I sank into the chair Hermione vacated and ignored the three of them as they argued quietly. And then the portrait hole opened and closed. My eyes drifted shut and I dreamt that Harry, Hermione, Neville, and Ron waited in the trophy room until somebody spoke. The four of them fled. And eventually ran into Peeves. Ron swiped at him. Peeves shouted, "Students out of bed. Students out of bed down the charms corridor." They bolted and tried to open a locked door. Dread ran through me. They shouldn't go through it. Hermione took Harry's wand and tapped the lock, muttering, "Alohomora." They slipped in the room and listened while Peeves and Filch argued. "He's gone," Harry said finally. Neville tugged frantically at Harry's robes. "What, Neville?" They all turned and saw a three-headed dog, snarling. They screamed and rushed out of the room, closing and locking it behind them. They ran all the way back to Gryffindor Tower. I sat up immediately as I heard Ron gasping for breath in the common room. Somehow, I knew that what I dreamed really happened. "You guys, are you all right?" I helped Neville sit down on the couch while he tried to stop quivering in fear. "We just ran into a three-headed dog," Harry said, confirming the thought that my dream really had happened. "What are they thinking, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school?" Ron asked. "Didn't you see what it was standing on?" I was a bit preoccupied with its three heads. Ron panted. "It was standing on a trapdoor. It's guarding something." Hermione straightened. "Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed or worse, expelled." She walked up the girls' stairs in a huff. Ron looked at us. "She needs to sort out her priorities." "A three-headed dog," Esme exclaimed. "And you didn't tell me?" Remus asked. "Not really, you'd have freaked. And there was no reason to. I wasn't even there, and they got out in one piece." "Bella, didn't you say earlier that your scar showed you a three-headed dog?" Carlisle asked curiously. I nodded. "Yes, I did. So your scar showed you things that would happen?" I shrugged. "Pretty much, but we'll get to that." A couple of days later, we met up with Wood for our first Quidditch practice. Angelina Johnson and Katie Bell helped by tossing a quaffle in a circle and seeing how many times I dropped it. I only dropped 3 out of 20. Wood tossed Harry golf balls, one right after the other. He didn't miss a single one. I laughed. Wood was so excited. He honestly believed we would win the Quidditch Cup that year. Harry sighed. After that, nothing exciting happened until Halloween. "Oh, great, the dreaded holiday," Sirius groaned. We were trying to levitate feathers in charms. I was partnered with Neville, Harry with Seamus Finnegan, and Hermione and Ron were paired together. A disaster waiting to happen. "Wingardium Leviosa," I said, pointing to the feather with my wand. I was doing something wrong, since the feather wasn't floating, but what? Neville was saying the incantation correctly, but he wasn't using the correct movements. I watched Hermione and Ron a couple of tables away from us. "Ron, you're doing it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosar. You do it then, if you're so clever." Ron crossed his arms. Hermione pointed her wand at the feather and said, with a swish and flick of her wand, "Wingardium Leviosa." The feather levitated a few feet off the table. Professor Flitwick was ecstatic. Ron scowled and didn't speak for the rest of the lesson. On the way to the next class, I tried to catch up with the others. I was a few people away from Hermione, who was right behind Harry, Ron, and Seamus. "It's Leviosa, not Leviosar," Ron said in a high voice, mimicking Hermione's words from earlier. "She's a nightmare, honestly. No wonder she hasn't got any friends." I watched in despair as Hermione pushed past Ron purposefully, letting the three of them know that she heard them. "I think she heard you," Harry said. "No, really," I spat sarcastically, catching up with them. Before I left Charms, Professor Flitwick had cast an anti-tripping spell on me. "Now why would you think that? And you," I turned on Ron, "you have no right saying those sort of things. For your information, she does have a friend." "Oh, yeah, who?" Ron retorted. I looked into his blue eyes, and saw the slight fear in them. I felt slightly vindictive. He should be scared. Me. I turned on my heel and raced to the dormitory to put my books away so I could go search for Hermione. Ronald Weasley, Ginny hissed softly. I knew you were tactless, but to purposefully say something like that. She swiped at him, but Harry caught her wrist. Yeah, I was stupid, but hey. Bella chewed me out 6 years ago. Her glare is scary, Ron added softly. Good, almost everyone said. I could still see Rosalie glaring at the back of his head. If looks could kill, he'd be burned to a crisp. You know, the only reason I was willing to forgive you was because you were nice after that, I said. Ron took a pillow and threw it in my direction. It landed on my lap. Thanks, Ron. It was dinner time. I was sitting in a stall in the girls' bathroom with Hermione. Hermione, he's just jealous. You're the smartest girl in our year, a lot of people are jealous. Did he have to say that? She cried. My heart broke to see my friend so sad. I know I don't have any friends. Hey, I don't want to hear you saying anything like that again. He's being an idiot. You're not stupid, and you have friends. Hermione sniffled. Who? Well, would someone who wasn't your friend spend the last few hours in the bathroom trying to convince you to come out? She blinked back tears. You really think I'm your friend? No, Hermione, I think you're Professor McGonagall. Of course I'm your friend. I grinned maliciously. And you know what I'm gonna do as soon as we get out of here? I'm gonna hunt down Ron and make him regret the day he made you cry. Georgie Porgy, pudding and pie, kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. Hermione recited the Mother Goose nursery rhyme off the top of her head. Let's change that, shall we? Ronald Weasley eats all the pie. Hurt my friend's feelings and made her cry. When Bella Swan faced him that day, Ronald Weasley ran away. She hiccuped. Let's get out of here, shall we? I don't know about you, but I'm hungry. Hermione smiled softly. Let's do what's that smell? I unlocked the stall door and nearly gagged. It smelled like sweaty gym clothes and sewage. My eyes widened. There, looking down at me, was a troll. Holy crap, I gasped, then closed and locked the door again. What? Hermione asked anxiously. Troll, how'd a troll get in here? Someone must have let it in. When I open the door, run for the door and go get a teacher. I'll hold it off, then I'll be right behind you. But what if you get hurt? We'll both be hurt if we stay here much longer. The Troll swung its club and smashed the top half of the stalls. Hermione screamed as we ducked. Hermione, go! I crawled out from under the debris and made sure the troll came after me. Hermione rattled the door. It's locked, she screeched. The door flew open. Wingardium Leviosa, I cried, sending debris flying toward the troll as it turned toward Hermione. It swung its club at me. I ducked under the sinks, but I dropped my wand. It swung again, and Harry dropped down on its head. His wand flew up its nostril, and it turned its attention to the pest on its head. It grabbed Harry's ankle and swung him around. He dangled from the troll's hand. I ran around it to find Hermione. She was standing by the door, next to Ron. I glared at him. He didn't see it. Do something, Harry cried as the troll tried to hit him. Harry kept lifting his head up, so the club would miss him by inches. What? Ron cried. He was the only one who had a wand left. Anything. Wingardium Leviosa, I gasped. Swish and flick, Hermione said as Ron pointed his wand at the club. Wingardium Leviosa, he cried, following Hermione's directions. The club slipped from the troll's head and it looked up stupidly. The club whacked it on the head after Ron dropped his wand. It swayed, then fell. Harry flew out of its hand and landed near us. Harry, are you okay? I asked, helping him up. Yeah, is it dead? Hermione asked. Don't think so, just knocked out, Harry said. He and I moved cautiously around it so we could get our wands back. Harry grimaced. Troll bogies. He wiped his wand on the troll's pants. Footsteps raced toward the bathroom. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell rushed inside, then froze halfway through the door. Explain yourselves, all of you. Professor McGonagall demanded. The boys stuttered. I stayed quiet. It's my fault, Professor McGonagall. We turned to face Hermione, who was looking ashamed. Miss Granger, Professor McGonagall asked faintly. I went looking for the troll. I read about them and thought I could handle it. But I was wrong. If Harry, Ron, and Bella hadn't found me, I'd probably be dead. Harry and Ron were looking at each other, amazed. I closed my eyes, wondering why my friend was taking the blame for Ron's mistakes. That was an extremely foolish thing to do. 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for your stupidity. As for you three, she continued, gesturing to Harry, Ron and I. I hope you realize how fortunate you are. Not many first years could take on a full-grown troll and live to tell the tale. 15 points will be awarded to Gryffindor. Harry and Ron looked relieved. They locked you in there. Edward growled. His hands flexed, like he wanted to place them around Harry's and Ron's necks. We never said that, Ron protested. Hermione and Harry thought it. Ron glared at Harry, but it was more fearful than scary. Emmett and Jasper growled. Remus's eyes were wide. Sirius was getting his breathing under control. Guys, we got out fine. We became friends after that. You became friends after fighting a troll? Esme asked incredulously. Well, more like Hermione lied to save Aura. And we got nicer to each other after that, I said, cutting Ron off. You weren't put in danger because of these fools after that? Rosalie asked. We're not fools, Harry protested. Harry, shut up if you value your limbs, she replied sweetly. Actually, it's not the boys' fault, Hermione said. Someone let the troll in as a distraction. They went after whatever the dog was guarding, Jasper guessed. Harry looked at him, open-mouthed. Soldier in the Confederate Army during the Civil War, Emmett explained. The what, Harry? Ron and Ginny asked. I rolled my eyes. I'm getting you boys history books for Christmas. So, why? Oh, you guys had a pretty peaceful life after the Halloween incident, right? Carlisle asked cautiously. Harry, Hermione and Ron looked thoughtful. You know, I think we did. Ron looked amazed. Rosalie's glare, which had steadily been drilling a hole in Ron's head, let up slightly. And you got into no more dangerous stuff until the end of the year, right? Remus asked sternly. Well, there was a few little incidents. But nothing major happened, Harry said carefully. Yeah, I grinned. It was mild. Ron and Hermione argued, and Quidditch practices were called maybe 4 nights a week. I looked over to Harry. He nodded, grimacing, and then it was the first game of the season. Hopefully this would get them distracted for a little bit. I remember my first Quidditch game, Sirius said. James and I woke up at 5 in the morning. We were so excited. Of course, Remus kicked us out and made us sit in the common room. I was tired. Remus sighed. You and James would not shut up. You have no idea how close I was to punching you two in the mouth. Yeah, Sirius grumbled. Bella wrote every detail of the game that she saw in a letter, from the moment they took off until Harry caught the snitch, Remus added. Oh, really? Hermione asked skeptically. Well, all the safe parts, I said sheepishly. Remus closed his eyes. Do I even want to know? All the Cullens seemed to agree with him. Well, to tell you the truth, probably not, but you're going to tell us anyway, right? Ginny asked sweetly. Are you trying to give us gray hair before we're 50? Sirius groaned. If Vampires could get wrinkles, Esme muttered. Harry, Oliver, Angelina Johnson, Katie Bell, Fred, George and I marched onto the Quidditch pitch. I was so excited, but a little worried at the same time. What if I made a fool of myself? What if I fell off my broom? When I saw the crowd, I paled. Bella, calm down, Katie said from beside me. Nothing's going to happen. All we have to do is keep the FLE away from the Slytherins and avoid the Bludgers. I took a deep breath. Okay. Katie smiled and pointed to the Gryffindor stands. Hermione, Ron, and Neville stood behind a bed sheet that had a drawing of a lion on it. In flashing colors it read, Go Gryffindors. I grinned, feeling happier than I had for the last few hours. We mounted our brooms while Madame Hooch let the Bludgers and Snitch out. Then she released the quaffle, and the game was on. Angelina caught the quaffle first and took off toward the Slytherin goalposts. Katie and I were right behind her. She scored easily. Looks like Slytherins haven't gotten any better than they were last year, Katie commented. Have they always played that bad? Ginny asked Sirius. Sirius shook his head. When my brother Regulus was on the team, it was really close every time. Your brother was on the team? Harry asked, shocked. Yeah, he played Seeker. I had just made my first goal and the score was 90-30 to Gryffindor when I noticed that Harry's broom was out of control. He was holding onto it so tightly, I saw his fingers turn white. Fred and George tried to get close enough to help him off, but the broom just went higher. Harry, I gasped. Bella, Angelina hollered. What's going on? Someone's jinxing the broom. I scanned the crowd. I saw Hermione leave her seat and sneak over to Snape, bumping into Professor Quirrell. My scar froze to the point of pain. And I cried out. An image flashed in my brain, too fast for me to decipher consciously. When my vision cleared, Harry was zooming down after the snitch. He got so low to the ground that he actually stood up on the broom and reached for the snitch. He threw his broom off balance, though, and tumbled to the ground. Harry, I breathed. He stood up and coughed something out of his mouth. Then raised it over his head. Harry Potter has caught the snitch. Lee Jordan shouted into the microphone, above the uproar in the crowd. Really? I heard one of the Slytherin beaters shout. Fred and George were laughing when they landed next to Harry. Great job, mate. Excellent catch. I laughed and tripped getting off my broom. Katie caught my arm to keep me from doing a face plant into the ground. Brilliant, Harry. So Snape was the one jinxing the broom? Sirius asked, eyes narrowed. That's what we thought, Harry confirmed. Turns out we were wrong. Sirius blinked. What? He was trying to protect Harry. This Snape character sounds confusing, Jasper deduced. Protecting us while hating us. Can't get more confusing than that, I agreed. Blank, underscore, blank. Remus Pav. I swear, those two were out to kill me. It seemed like they were in danger every week. I stood up. Bella looked over. Remus, where are you going? Downstairs. I need to talk to Molly. Ron paled. I chuckled. Don't worry, Ron. I'll make sure you're the one to tell her all about your dangerous adventures. Now, I may just hint that they had those adventures to begin with. But that's another matter entirely. Edward coughed as I passed by. Obviously, he'd heard my intentions. Bella narrowed her eyes at Edward, knowing that vampires didn't need to cough. Hurry back, Alice said. I can't wait to hear what else Bella's gotten up to. I nodded and left the room. So was I, and once I heard what other trouble she and the others got into third and fourth year not included, I knew what happened both those years, and fourth year wasn't their faults. I was going to put her on borough arrest until September 1st. I figured the Cullens would help keep an eye on her and keep her occupied. So boredom wouldn't be a problem. Molly looked up when I came into the kitchen. Hello, Remus. Do you need anything? No thanks, Molly. I was just taking a break from being in one room. Why is everyone up there anyway? Thank you, Molly Weasley, for the perfect opening. They were just telling us about their school adventures. I can't believe they go looking for trouble. They're always in the middle of something dangerous every week, and we've only reached November of first year. Harry and Bella are going to make my hair go white by the time they're through with their stories. Molly turned around, facing me. What do you mean? She asked suspiciously. I know they've had a few incidences every year, but other than that, Molly closed her eyes. They've been keeping secrets, haven't they? I widened my eyes innocently. You mean Ron never told you about the troll? Molly's face paled. We got a note saying that a troll had gotten loose but that no one was hurt. I asked Augusta about it, but she didn't get any note. I shrugged. I got the same note, but I thought it was normal procedure. Now I'm wondering if they only sent it to the parent or guardian of the kids involved. I looked thoughtful for a second, and then said, I'd better get back. I had just made it up the stairs, running, mind you, when her voice followed me. Ronald Weasley. She sounded very angry. Sirius was waiting outside the room. Very nice, he complimented. I smirked mischievously. Once a marauder, always a marauder. I wiped the smirk off my face. When I peeked in I saw Ron, Harry, Hermione and Bella had all paled. Hey, Ron, I think your mum wants to see you. I think I'll stay here, Ron squeaked. You'll have to tell her eventually, Esme said kindly. She stood, pulling Ron with her. When she left, Sirius moved forward. Harry, I want to talk to you. He walked out, and Harry followed as slowly as possible. Bella faced me. Remus, what did you do? I have no idea what you mean, Bella. I didn't tell her anything. Bella opened her mouth to protest, but she closed it at the look that I gave her. You do realize that we need to have a talk, right? She nodded, looking glum. When? Now is as good a time as any. I grabbed her wrist and led her out of the room. Blank, underscore, blank. Bella Pav. I wasn't in Ginny's room 2 seconds when Remus spoke. I hope you four realize that until you get to Hogwarts, we'll be watching you like hawks. I winced. Yeah, I'd figured as much. Look, Remus, I'd have told you, but it's in the past. And we were fine, in the end. You and Harry are just like Sirius and I. Every time something was wrong, we'd say we were fine. We never told people our problems unless it had already happened or it was forced out of us. Remus sighed. James wasn't like that. Neither was Lily. They always forced the issue until we let something slip, kind of like Hermione. He looked at the yard, lost in his memories. After a few moments, he looked at me. You four will finish telling us everything, and don't leave any details out. Secrets have a way of getting out. Yeah, I got that, I grumbled. You'd know if we were lying anyway. Because Edward would read Harry's or Ron's mind. And Jasper would know we were nervous, generally meaning someone's hiding something or about to get into trouble. Remus sighed. Let's go back, Bella. We went back into the room to find Esme, Sirius and Harry sitting in their spots. Ron came up moments later, blushing. Mrs. Weasley followed him in. Now, I can't listen. Your father will be home soon, but I will hear about all your other adventures from someone in this room. You're lucky you guys haven't died yet. She embraced Ron, still scolding him. And don't think your father won't hear about this. With that, Mrs. Weasley left the room. Ron turned to us, shamefaced and pale. Well, that went better than I thought it would. I frowned. It's just because she worries about you guys, Ron. She worries about all of us, Ron corrected me. Good thing, too, Sirius said, since none of you seem to worry about yourselves. I want to hear about the rest of your first year, Ginny piped up. I leaned against Edward, who wrapped me tightly in his arms. Okay, the next thing was, Christmas. I asked, trying to remember. Ron, surprisingly, was the one to correct me. Flammel. Oh, right, we found out what Fluffy was guarding, Hermione jumped in. We were telling Hagrid that we thought Snape had jinxed Harry's broom. Why'd he go and do a thing like that? Hermione shrugged. Maybe he hates Harry that much. Or maybe he knows I know he was after whatever the three-headed dog was guarding, and he didn't want me to talk, Harry said darkly. I looked at him like he was crazy. What? It happens all the time in murder mysteries. Howdy, ye know about Fluffy? Hagrid asked, surprised. Fluffy, we all asked, shocked. That thing has a name. Hermione continued. Course he does. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard. Hagrid shook his head violently and stopped talking. Guard what? Ron asked. None o' her business. That is strictly between Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Nicholas Flamel, Hermione repeated. I've heard that name before, but I can't think of where, I mentioned. Hagrid looked furious with himself. Before he marched off to his hut, he told us. Go directly up to the castle. And, no more questions. Remus narrowed his eyes at me. I looked back innocently. And to think I told Hagrid you weren't a troublemaker. So, then we went looking for any reference to Nicholas Flamel, Hermione continued, saving me. We couldn't find anything before Christmas break, so Bella and I went home for the holiday. Ron and Harry stayed behind, Romizing they were going to look for the name Nicholas Flamel. The worst that happened to me was the fact that I skipped between visiting my dad, Mom, and Remus during vacation. Esme sighed in relief. That's good. What about Harry and Ron and Hermione? Carlisle asked. I was with my parents all vacation, Hermione said. They didn't know anything about Flamel. On Christmas, I got my father's invisibility cloak. Harry contributed. I snuck into the restricted section with it to look for Flamel, and the book screamed. Sirius winced. That sucks. Harry nodded. So I hid in a room, and there was this mirror that showed your heart's desire. Sirius and Remus paled. Lily and James. Harry nodded sadly. I went back to see them for a few nights. I even took Ron, but I didn't realize he wouldn't see them. On the third night, Dumbledore told me what the mirror did and that I shouldn't go looking for the mirror again. It's good that he did. It does no one any good to dwell on dreams, Rosalie told him. Harry turned to her, smiling slightly. Dumbledore said almost the same thing. And after Christmas, we couldn't spend as much time wondering about Flamel or Fluffy because Quidditch practice started up again. I joined in the conversation again. Wood was pushing us harder than he had all year, and he wasn't in the mood to deal with fooling around. Especially when he found out who was refereeing the next match. Harry pulled a face. Will you two quit fooling around? Wood roared. Snape will be looking for any reason to give penalties, and this fooling around will give him plenty reason. But, Oliver, Alicia Spinnet, our reserve player, spoke up. Snape's not refereeing for us, is he? Oliver nodded vigorously. McGonagall told me this morning. I don't know why, but we cannot let him foul our chances of winning the Quidditch Cup. No wonder you found him suspicious, Jasper said. He certainly didn't win himself points with his behavior. I laughed. That's exactly what we thought at the end of the year. So, what happened? Emmett asked eagerly. Harry shrugged. We won. I caught the snitch in about 5 minutes. Eventually, we figured out who Nicholas Flamel was. It turned out that he was the only known creator of the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione looked around. Everyone looked puzzled. It gives the user immortality and wealth. Immortality isn't the best thing in the world. Carlisle immediately protested. If you're rich and unhappy, what's the point? Alice frowned. That's just it. Some people are insanely greedy, and others fear death. That's how there are ghosts at Hogwarts, Remus explained. Would you become a ghost or live forever? Rosalie asked curiously. With no hesitation, Remus shook his head. No, immortality is not worth the loss of your loved ones. Same, agreed most of the other wizards in the room. Rosalie looked at me. Bella, I glanced at her, amazed. She was willingly asking my opinion. I thought over my answer for a second. Well, nothing can be truly immortal, we all will die eventually. You have to deal with loss at some point, no matter how long you live. Spending a longer than average lifetime with those you love is understandable. But if someone just wants to avoid death, I think that's selfish. Rosalie blinked. But you'd be giving up so much to be immortal. Rosalie, I'm not going to become a vampire right away. I still have a couple of years. Rosalie's face got a determined look. Blank, underscore, blank. Harry Pav, Bella wants to become a vampire. As I thought about it, I could see the reason she would want to be one. She'd be stronger, faster, and be able to live with Edward for a long time. But what about children? Could vampires even have children? And what about when we all aged and died? How would she feel then? I stopped my train of thought because Edward looked like he was brooding. Alice and Emmett apparently thought so, too. They each picked up a pillow and threw it at him. One smacked him in the face, but the other hit Bella. She laughed. That brought Edward out of his musings. Ginny tapped my shoulder. Sometime this year, hun. Back to the story, I reminded everyone immediately. Emmett and Jasper coughed something that suspiciously sounded like, whipped. Rosalie and Alice raised their eyebrows at those two, who stopped mocking me. I hid a smile. Whipped, indeed. Blank, underscore, blank. Bella Pav. Okay, now, I may not have mentioned this earlier, but in the springtime, Hagrid got a dragon egg. It was kind of cute when it hatched, too. A dragon. I think we broke Sirius, I thought. He didn't even look shocked. You just happened to conveniently forget that there was a dragon that year. Remus lay down on the pillows. Please tell me you convinced Hagrid to get rid of it. Hermione nodded enthusiastically. Yes, as a matter of fact, we did. Good, everyone in the room exclaimed. But not before it got a nice bite out of my hand, Ron grumbled. Hermione smacked his chest. Ow, he was fine, I reassured Esme. We made him go to the hospital wing. We also wrote his brother, Charlie, who works with dragons. He told us his friends were going to come pick it up. Unfortunately, it was at midnight in the astronomy tower. And Malfoy got the letter. Harry winced. The invisibility cloak would only fit toupee. Opal since we were going to carry Norbert. Since Bella was still under the clumsy curse, and Ron was in the hospital wing, Harry and I took Norbert to the tower. Hermione grimaced, remembering what happened the next day. I woke up from a dreamless sleep only to find Hermione crying in the corner. The other girls were gone. What's wrong? Did you guys get hurt with Norbert? Hermione shook her head. We got Norbert out okay. But we forgot the cloak on the way back down. Filch caught us. I winced. That sucks. Did you guys get detention? She nodded. And 50 points taken away from Gryffindor, each. What's worse, Neville and Malfoy were there. They got the same deal. I blinked. That means Gryffindor lost 150 points last night, taking away our points for winning the Quidditch game and our chance at the House Cup, Hermione sobbed. I got up and wrapped my arms around her. Well, at least Norbert is gone. And I'm sure the twins have done worse. I know for a fact why Uncle and his friends did worse during school. Of course, they always won those points back, but I decided not to mention that. We'll get the points back, Hermione. They'll hate us, Hermione whispered. Surely it wasn't that bad. Esme said. Sirius and Remus winced. It probably was. We take house competitions seriously. It was. Ron nodded. All the students, except the Slytherins, were angry. Slytherin had won for the past 7 years. Oh, man, Sirius groaned. What have those kids been doing? Even Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw were against you. Remus asked. We all nodded. Cedric, I hollered, racing to catch up to the older Hufflepuff. I tripped. Cedric turned and caught me from falling down the stairs. Thanks. I haven't seen you in a while. Cedric shrugged, smiling. I've been busy, Bella. How have you been? Good. But Harry's run into a little problem. Cedric frowned. Those house points, right? I nodded. Everyone has had something to say about it. Even the Hufflepuffs are shunning him. The Slytherins have won for the past 7 years, Bella. We were finally hoping that someone would beat them. Gryffindor is the only house that stands a chance. And now that Gryffindor is out of the running, it looks like Slytherin will win again. Nobody's happy about that. Having 3 first years lose all those points didn't help matters. I sighed. I just wish they wouldn't take it out on Harry, Hermione, and Neville. This gives Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws a chance for the cup, too. They just have to try harder. Somehow, I know that this year Slytherin won't win the cup. Cedric laughed. Yeah, if you say so. Get to class. We don't want Gryffindor to lose even more points. Promise to try to get the Hufflepuffs off their backs. I begged. I'll try. No promises they'll listen to me, though. I grinned. Thanks, Seed. I turned and bolted for Charms. He was wrong. All the Hufflepuffs looked up to Cedric. He was the embodiment of all things Hufflepuff. Loyal, fair, if he told the others to lay off, they would, even if they didn't like it. It worked, I take it. I was sure Alice already knew the answer, though. I nodded. Ced's just that cool. Emmett chuckled. Oh, Seed. He wiggled his eyebrows at me. I felt Edward tense slightly. Yeah, he's kind of like you, only nicer. He's like my cousin. I threw a pillow at Emmett. It missed. Be nice, Esme commanded. After that, the Hufflepuffs laid off Harry, Hermione, and Neville. They still had to serve detention, though. I peeked over Harry's shoulder at the note McGonagall had sent him. He hones. TLY had detention at 11 o'clock at night. Nothing good could come out of that detention. I shivered as my scar froze and I saw a dark figure bent over a dead unicorn. Harry, be careful tonight, okay? Harry looked at me funnily. I rolled my eyes. Look at everything that's happened so far this year. He nodded. I'll be as careful as I can. Where did they go? Sirius looked like he was bracing himself for the blow. The Forbidden Forest, Harry told him cautiously. Sirius slammed his face into a pillow. I will be having words with McGonagall. Ron and I were asleep in the common room. We had fallen asleep waiting for Hermione, Harry, and Neville to return. Harry shook us awake around midnight. Neville immediately went up to bed. Well, I asked. What happened? We went into the Forbidden Forest. We were searching for something that was killing unicorns. I gasped. Killing a unicorn was a serious deal. Did you find it? He nodded. It was Voldemort. Ron jumped. Don't say that name. Why would he be drinking unicorn blood, though? Hermione asked. If you kill a unicorn, you're cursed to live a half-life. That's what Firenze said. Firenze, the centaur that saved Harry. He also let him ride on his back. Hermione sounded confused. I gazed at Harry in awe. A centaur let you ride his back? Wow. Ron looked amazed, too. Why did everyone make a big deal out of Firenze letting Harry ride him? He got him to safety, and he committed a crime. Ron turned to Hermione. Centaurs are very proud creatures. Riding one of them is like having, he trailed off, thinking. Quote, like having Harry lend you his broomstick. Or getting Oliver to let you skip out on Quidditch practice. I offered. Ron nodded. It wouldn't happen normally. Hermione's eyes widened. Oh, that night, Harry found the invisibility cloak on his bed. Someone decided to return it to him. A while later, Harry heard Quirrell being threatened. Naturally, we suspected Snape. But Harry promised himself not to get into any more trouble that year. Ron coughed something that sounded like, impossible. Hermione smiled. Yes, Ron, it was. He managed until exams were over. Then, he got a thought in his head. We ran down to Hagrid's to ask about the dragon egg, since they're illegal. Got it from a feller down in the pub, Hagrid told Harry. I was bewildered. Why was Harry asking about Norbert now? What did he look like? Dunno. He didn't take his hood off. Not unusual, fair to, pub. What else did he say? Harry asked urgently. He asked about Fluffy, about how I managed him. Told him he was, armless. As long as you played some music. Then he'd fall as. Hagrid stopped talking, but we had already realized what he was going to say. We all turned to each other, and dread bubbled up in my stomach. On an unspoken signal, we all turned and raced back to the castle. We have to tell McGonagall. Hermione gasped, clutching her side as we reached the entrance hall. She should be in her office, I told her. I turned and bumped right into Fred and George. Hey, guys, I tried to sound casual, I failed. They looked at the four of us suspiciously. What are you guys doing? Looking for McGonagall. Hermione here can't wait to find out what she got on the exam. Hermione scowled at me for throwing her under the bus. George rolled his eyes. I think I saw her going toward Flitwick's room. I grinned. Thanks. I took Harry's arm and walked away slowly. When we could no longer see the twins, I let go of Harry. Okay, here's the deal. Harry, you let either me or Hermione do the talking. More than likely, she won't believe you because of the dragon incident. If we explain what? A cold voice spoke from behind me. I spun around quickly, tripping over my robes. Ron kept me from falling. Why, I wanted to check on my exam grade, Professor, Hermione bravely answered Snape. Snape sneered. You'll get your grade when everyone else do, Miss Granger. Now, why don't you four go outside? It's a lovely day, after all. Hermione nodded. Yes, sir. So we had no choice but to head in the opposite direction of where we wanted to go. We lost Snape and were able to see Professor McGonagall. Mr. Potter, what is the meaning of this? She asked as we came barging into her office. We know about the Philosopher's Stone, Harry told her immediately. Professor, we think someone is going to try to steal it to help Voldemort come back to life, I explained. How do you four know about the stone? She asked. And what makes you think that you know who will come back? Harry saw him in the forest during detention. Hermione said. The stone grants immortality, and isn't that what he wants? Professor, someone else is working with Voldemort, I added, ignoring her and Ron's gasps. We think it's either Snape or Quirrell. Harry raised his eyebrows. Quirrell. Both Professor Snape and Professor Quirrell are trying to protect the stone, Miss Swan, McGonagall reprimanded me. Neither of them would try to steal it. Now, off with you. Forget about the stone, it's well protected. You four didn't believe her, so you went to protect the stone yourself, Jasper guessed. Harry shrugged. Bella believed her. I didn't. We decided to sneak down at night under the cloak, to make sure. I scoffed. That's what you think. I wondered if McGonagall suspected Quirrell. If she did, she couldn't exactly tip him off. Quote, she decided to spy on Quirrell, Ron elaborated. She stole my cloak, Harry grumbled. I snuck up to Harry's dorm while he was ranting about what would happen if Voldemort returned. He was right, which was why I had to stop him from doing something stupid. If he didn't have the cloak, he couldn't go out without being caught. Hermione wouldn't let him. I silently crept downstairs, then waited until someone entered the portrait hole. I walked slowly to the third-floor corridor, nearly running into several students. I saw one who might be able to help me, in case things went downhill. I pulled off the cloak, hid it, and waved to get Cedric's attention. Bella, he greeted me, coming over. How are things? Did you get through the exams all right? Yeah, listen, Cede, you know how there's the corridor we aren't supposed to go in? Cedric nodded. Someone's going to try to steal the Sorcerer's Stone, that's what's in there. Harry wants to get there and hide it again. But if he waits until after curfew then it'll be too late. What do you want me to do about it? He asked. Be my backup in case things go wrong. I looked at him hopefully. Pretty please. If something goes wrong and someone gets hurt, then at least someone will be able to get a professor. Plus, you know more spells than I do. All I plan on doing is watching the door to see who goes in, I swear. Cedric nodded, resigned. But if I get in trouble, it's on your head, understand? I nodded and hugged him. Thanks, Cede. We ducked under the cloak. Cedric was excited to see one in real life. They were so rare, and continued toward the third-floor corridor. We got there just in time to see the door close. I threw the cloak off of us in annoyance. Crap, I hissed. Did you see who it was? Cedric shook his head. All I saw was a cloak. I had figured as much. You want to come with me, or get a teacher? Cedric looked at me as if I was crazy. If you think I'm going to let you go into a room with a potentially dangerous person, Swan, you're sadly mistaken. Then let's go. We peeked in the room and found the cloaked figure bewitching a harp. It turned, and my scarf froze for the second time that day. I saw, once more, a purple object falling to the floor. But this time, I knew what it was. A turban. Quirrell, I breathed, unable to believe it. Quirrell turned and whipped out his wand. Cedric pulled me out of the way just in time, the curse blasted part of the door away. He pulled the cloak over us again, and put his hand over my mouth. I didn't even have time to wonder why. Quirrell stepped out and pointed his wand directly at us. How could he see us? I panicked. Cedric drew his wand and whispered, Protega. Seconds later, Quirrell sent a spell into the shield. He probably would have done worse. But footsteps sounded in the hall. Quirrell disappeared. We waited with bated breath. A few minutes later, long enough for Quirrell to get through the trapdoor, Harry, Hermione, and Ron appeared. I sighed in relief and anger. I was trying to keep them out of this. Harry, I cried. I pulled the cloak off me. Cedric followed soon after. It's Quirrell. He's after the stone, not Snape. Harry looked at Cedric. You told him about the cloak? I rolled my eyes. I had to. I was trying to keep you out of this, and Sid has more experience with this. He protected us when Quirrell tried blasting us to bits. Hermione gasped. Are you all right? I nodded. We're fine. Please tell me at least one teacher is on the way. No, we came looking for you, figuring you'd be here. Ron glared at Cedric. We didn't expect you and your boyfriend to be here. 1. He's not my boyfriend. 2. Are we going to stand here talking or go after Quirrell? Let's go, Harry decided. He turned to Cedric. If you don't want to come with us, it's understandable. Let McGonagall or Dumbledore know what's going on. Cedric folded his arms. You Gryffindors really are crazy. Like I told Bella, I'm not letting you four go after a madman alone. Bella's my friend, and you're all first years. Gryffindor may stand for bravery, but Hufflepuffs take loyalty very seriously. And if Hat means following you fools into danger, then fine. Harry nodded. Ron and Hermione looked surprised. I just watched Cedric with tears in my eyes. He truly was the embodiment of all things Hufflepuff. We entered the room carefully, on the lookout for any movement. There was nothing, so we moved to the trapdoor. Harry opened it and dropped in first. Ron and Cedric went next. Hermione and I followed right after them. It felt like falling down a really long slide. When I finally landed, I had the breath knocked out of me. There was something soft beneath me, but it was moving. Get up, Cedric cried. It's Devil's Snare. Hermione was already clutching the wall, and I jumped up as fast as I could. Harry and Ron were entangled. Don't move. If you fight, it'll kill you faster. Hermione shrieked. Hermione, ears. I winced. Incendio. Cedric pointed his wand at the Devil's Snare. It burned and shriveled up, dropping Ron and Harry. They yelped and I screamed. Cedric peered down the hole. They're all right. He jumped after them. I peeked. The drop wasn't very far, maybe 5 feet. I looked at Hermione. We nodded and jumped as one. Landing next to Harry, I tripped over his outstretched arm. Hermione grabbed my shirt sleeve before I fell completely. Where next? Ron asked. I hear wings, Harry told us. I focused, but I couldn't hear anything. We followed Harry down the hall and found keys. Flying keys. Harry, I think this was made with you in mind, Cedric joked. There were 3 brooms in the middle of the room. Harry, Cedric, and I went over to them while Ron and Hermione checked the door. Locked, Ron told us. Not even Hermione can open it. What kind of a key are we looking for? Cedric asked. Old-fashioned, maybe a bit rusty, like a handle. Like that one, Ari pointed to a flying key with a bent wing. Yes, Quirrell would have been in a hurry to catch the key to get to the stone, it's gotta be that one. I grabbed a broom. Harry and Cedric grabbed the other 2. How long did it take you to catch the key? Emmett asked. A few minutes. After we got the door open, we went into the next room. It turned out to be a giant wizard's chessboard. How is it different from regular chess? Jasper asked. The pieces come alive, Ron said, and smash other pieces. And if you had to play as a piece, Edward groaned, you could get hurt. Hermione nodded, grabbing Ron's hand. Ron was a genius. I was the queen, Harry and Cedric were bishops, Bella was a castle, and Ron was a knight. He kept us all in perfect health, and took down several main pieces. But, like in real chess, sacrifices had to be made. Harry looked at Ron. It's the only way, Ron explained. I have to be taken. Then, Harry, you can checkmate the king. See, he's trapped, he has 1 space to move. And if you get there first, he's dead. Checkmate. As soon as the game is done, Cedric will take him to the hospital wing. No, I'm going with you. You need to make sure Ron and Hermione get past Fluffy safely. Quirrell could kill you. He tried earlier tonight. He won't kill me or Harry. How do you know that? Cedric snapped. I don't want to be the one to tell your uncle you died. We won't die. I just know it. Trust me. Cedric, pain filling his eyes at leaving us behind, finally nodded. All right, Ron, do it. Harry looked ready to protest. I had just about had it. It's the only way, Harry. We have to stop Quirrell. I don't want this any more than you, but Ron is a master chess player, and he's only 11. If he says it's the only way, then it's the only way. Before we could argue anymore, Ron called his next move. His horse moved forward and was soon in position. The queen moved in his direction. Hermione turned away as the queen struck Ron's horse, causing him to fall heavily to the ground. Hermione tried to go to him, but Harry stopped her. If you move, we lose, and Ron's move was for nothing. Go, Harry, I whispered. He stepped forward until he was in position. Checkmate, he called. The king let go of his sword and it fell at Harry's feet. We waited a moment until we knew it was safe, and then Hermione rushed to Ron's side. Cedric wasn't too far behind and he pulled her out of the way to check on Ron. He's still breathing, but he might have a concussion. The sooner we get him to Madame Pomfrey, the better. Cedric hoisted Ron up. Hermione supported Ron's other side without having to be asked. Go, he'll be fine, but if you die, I will bring you back from the dead and let your uncle kill you. I laughed shakily. We'll be fine. Why? And I entered the next room after watching the other three disappear. There was a dead troll in the room. We moved on, covering our mouths and noses from the dreadful stink. The room after that had potions and a riddle. Luckily, Remus had given me a book of riddles and made me practice, so after about 5 minutes I was able to find all the poisons in the wine. So, this one, I said, holding up one potion, will allow you to move forward. The other one allows you to go back. But there was a problem. There only seemed to be enough to allow one person to go onward. What if we each drank half? I asked. Bella, you should go back and check on Ron. No. Before he could stop me, I uncorked the potion and drank half of it. It felt like ice cream. I handed the rest to him. He scowled but drank it. Let's go. I walked through the flames confidently. We got into the final room. Bella was right, it was Quirrell, not Snape. But he wasn't alone. I watched in horror as Quirrell pulled Harry to face the mirror of Arised. What do you see? Quirrell bellowed. I'm shaking hands with Dumbledore, Harry stuttered. He sounded shocked. I've won the House Cup. Quirrell looked disappointed. He let go of Harry and went to grab my arm when someone whispered, he lies. I got a chill up my spine. It sounded like a snake hissing. Voldemort, I thought, though I had no idea where the thought came from. Quirrell caught Harry by the collar of his neck and hauled him back around. What did you see, boy? Harry didn't speak. Let me speak to him, face to face, the voice breathed. But master, you are not strong enough for this. Quirrell sounded afraid. I have strength enough for this. Quirrell reluctantly unwrapped his turban and let it fall to the floor. I watched it fall, fascinated. This was what I had seen on the first day of school. I looked in the mirror and was nearly sick. Quirrell had two faces. The second one was speaking now. Harry Potter. Isabella Black. It's Swan, Voldemort, I corrected him. Get it right. That's Voldemort. Harry gasped. See what you've done to me, Harry Potter. The face asked. Now, thanks to you, I had to go into hiding for all those years. Luckily, Quirrell found me in a forest in Albania. He tried to steal the stone for you. When that failed, you merged with him to make sure he got it, Harry deduced. Voldemort looked angry that his speech had been interrupted. Ah, too bad. Yes, Harry Potter. Now, Quirrell, take the stone from his pocket. Quirrell flew up the stairs. How did he do that? And grabbed Harry by the throat. I jumped onto Quirrell's back and found myself right next to Voldemort's face. It sneered at me. I punched it, feeling majorly disgusted when my fist connected. Quirrell jerked away from Harry, throwing me off his back. What is this? He cried. I looked at his hands. They were burning. The stone. Get the stone. Quirrell tried to obey his master's orders, grabbing Harry again. Harry's face started turning blue. Petrificus totalis. I flicked my wand and pointed it at Quirrell. He froze and fell backward, letting go of an unconscious Harry. I sighed in relief. It was over. I turned to the sound of footsteps behind me. Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Cedric stood there. Bella, Cedric cried. He looked horrified. I spun halfway, and saw Voldemort's spirit escaping Quirrell's body. The spirit had enough energy to send me flying into the mirror of Arised. It broke around me, and I landed in a pile of glass. I felt it pierce me in several places. I smelled the blood, and immediately the room began spinning. The last thing I remembered was McGonagall conjuring stretchers for me and Harry. Cedric told me later, in the hospital wing, that he raised the alarm at once. McGonagall was in a nearby corridor with Flitwick. He told McGonagall what was going on, and Flitwick took Ron and Hermione to the hospital wing. Dumbledore appeared out of nowhere and led them down to the room, bypassing all the defenses. You are so lucky. Cedric only wrote and told me you had an accident. Remus looked furious. I would have found a way to bring you back from the dead and kill you. For Merlin's sake, Bella. I winced. Now, Uncle Remus, don't you Uncle Remus me. Forget keeping an eye on you. You're on borough arrest until September 1st. His eyes were swimming with amber. It would be a bad idea to push him now. But I just couldn't stop. I'm of age. You can't ground me. I can, and depending upon how you look at it, you're still also a minor. You expect me to take the fact that you and Harry faced down Voldemort as first years lying down. No, Isabella. Oh, crap, there was the full name. Purposefully going to face Quirrell, who you knew was dangerous, was bad enough. But to end up facing Voldemort as well. I understand second year and fourth year, there was nothing you could do about that. Fifth year, you were with more than one adult and you had more experience. But you were lucky to have survived any of those. As a first year, next to only Harry, you could have died alone. If Cedric hadn't immediately raised the alarm, Voldemort could have either killed or possessed you too. I frowned, looking down. I hated seeing Remus like this. I'm sorry, we weren't thinking. Obviously, Remus snarled. I'm going out before I do something I regret later on. He stormed out of the room. Remus, I called. Let him go, Bella. He'll cool off. Sirius turned to Harry. Same goes for you, Harry. House arrest till term starts, and be glad that's all it is. Harry's mouth had dropped open in indignation. If Lily were still alive, she probably would have stuck to you like glue for several months, had several people guarding you, and locked you up in your room. Harry sighed. What happened at the end of the year? Ginny asked, trying to get everyone's minds off of what had just happened. Well, we lost the Quidditch Cup. Alicia Spinnet played Seeker, but we were still short a chaser. These two got out of the hospital wing a few days before school ended. Ron pointed to us. Before they got out, though, McGonagall visited. Madame Pomfrey told us we were allowed to leave at lunchtime. I was staring at the magical clock, waiting for the last 10 minutes to disappear. Harry was doing the same. Miss Swan, Mr. Potter, McGonagall's voice greeted us. We twisted our heads to see her enter the room with Cedric, Hermione, and Ron. Professor Dumbledore has decided what to do about your extremely reckless behavior. For some unknown reason, he has decided to award each of you 60 points for protecting the stone. Mr. Weasley is awarded 50 points for the best played game of chess ever seen at Hogwarts. Miss Granger gets 20 points for not abandoning her friends. Hermione gasped. That gives Gryffindor a total of 502 points. McGonagall nodded, smiling slightly. Indeed it does, Miss Granger. But I also have to award another house points. I glanced at Cedric, who blinked. I award Mr. Diggory 175 points for protecting younger students to the best of his ability and standing by his friends. He is the epitome of all things Hufflepuff. I cut McGonagall off proudly. She looked at me strangely. I was just about to say the same thing. I giggled, and nearly cried with happiness. This gave Hufflepuff 527 points, putting them over the top and winning the House Cup for the first time in a long time. Cedric looked like a fish out of water. But, Professor, you deserve it, Mr. Diggory. Hermione squealed and launched herself at Cedric. Congratulations, Cedric. Hufflepuff won, Ron asked, catching on. We all nodded. Harry laughed. Ron shrugged. I guess, for a duffer, he did all right. I gasped, pretending to be offended. Cedric had gotten redder than me. They're not duffers, Ron. They're the bravest house after Gryffindor, because they stand by their friends. Sometimes that takes as much courage as tickling a sleeping dragon. Sirius's eyes widened. They really won. Hermione nodded. Sirius laughed. I'll have to tell Tonks. I doubt she'll be able to believe it. Is that all of your first year? Esme asked as a clock in the burrow struck midnight. If it was, then you should go to bed. All right, Esme. We all left the room to get ready for bed. Hopefully tomorrow wouldn't be as bad. We already told them about the basilisk. Surely I won't get in even more trouble for something I had no control over. The end.